It is 6 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Wednesday, February 12th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. We have an absolutely jam-packed show for you today. In fact, we're going to go right to the phone lines as Jon Decker, White House correspondent, joins us to give us some update on these tariffs that are coming through. He has just spoken with President Trump's trade advisor, Peter Navarro, has the latest on the administration's tariff policies and what it means to you as a consumer. Good morning, Jon. Thanks for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yeah, good morning.
Hey, thanks for having me on, as always. Yes, I spoke with Peter Navarro. He was trade advisor to President Trump, his first term in the White House, and he's one of the few aides that has returned for Donald Trump's second term in the White House, a very loyal advisor in the sense that he essentially went to jail for President Trump. You may recall that he was sentenced and served prison time for defying a subpoena from the January 6th committee and has not been pardoned yet, which surprises me. But what Peter Navarro told me is that this tariff policy of President Trump is a winning strategy. He believes that the 25% tariffs that were announced by President Trump on Monday on imported steel and aluminum are winning strategies for the president and for the U.S. He believes it will lead to an increase in jobs in both the steel and aluminum industry. But there's no doubt that those manufacturers here in the U.S. that rely on imported steel and aluminum will certainly pass those costs along to the U.S. consumer.
Talking to Jon Decker, he's White House correspondent. Jon, I've been looking at a lot of the communications coming from the White House. It seems like folks celebrating these tariffs are steel and aluminum unions, but, you know, maybe the building industries, those that rely upon the imports, I'm not seeing a lot of communication from them celebrating these tariffs. Can you break down how different industries are responding to these tariffs?
Well, I think that's good that you noticed that. That is true. Manufacturers here in the U.S., and, you know, when you think about all the manufacturing capacity that takes place here in the U.S., just, you know, look at the cranes up, you know, in downtown Denver, and you can see there's a lot of manufacturing that requires steel. Now, not all of the steel is necessarily imported, but as it relates to Canada, they are the largest exporter to the U.S. of both steel and aluminum. They export to the U.S. $7 billion in steel, $9 billion in aluminum, and Canada will certainly impose retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods. So it's unknown whether this is a net win for the U.S. I think it's a wait-and-see approach. In the sense that, yes, there may be some jobs gained in both the steel and aluminum industry, but the question is, does that offset the inflation that tariffs typically have on the U.S. economy? We'll have to wait and see what the situation is here in the U.S. as it relates to our overall economy in 1 year's time.
Talking with Jon Decker, he's White House correspondent, just spoke with Peter Navarro about tariffs. Now, it seems like one of the big arguments coming from the White House is that we're not in a free market when it comes to steel and aluminum because other countries are subsidizing those industries to make it cheaper. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Well, that's exactly right. That's one of the points that Peter Navarro made to me when I spoke with him yesterday. He said, look, we have no allies when it comes to steel and aluminum. We have competitors, and some of our competitors, China to name one, subsidizes its steel industry. And how do you compete with an industry that's subsidized nationally by the government? The president believes the only way to compete is to impose tariffs to even the playing field as it relates to the price of steel worldwide and place that tariff on that imported steel and aluminum so that the U.S. steel and aluminum industry can benefit. Again, we'll have to wait and see. Peter Navarro, he has been, I think you could call him a disciple of a trade tariff policy, and it's something that President Trump likes, and it's the reason why he has kept him on as his trade advisor in his second term.
Jon Decker, White House correspondent, updating us on all these tariffs that are going to affect us. Jon, thanks so much for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill Show this morning.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me on today. Bye-bye.
Well, it's a very cold morning, and with the latest news, Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Burr, you're right, Jeff and Billy. 2 degrees and cloudy in Denver, expecting a high of 13 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story, hundreds of flights delayed at DIA Tuesday, and cold weather and snow moved into the region yesterday. Of course, according to FlightAware, more than 800 flights were delayed and around 15 were canceled. Travel woes could continue today as winter weather advisory is in place until around 11 o'clock this morning for most of the Front Range.
My mother went to the Trump rally and saw President Trump shortly before he was shot.
In Butler,
So
right?
it was
In Butler, where she's
yes.
from.
It's
Yeah.
just a crazy turn of events. And he told her then that if he was elected, he was going to get him out. And the man was true to his word. And then to hear that he was out of Russian airspace, it was just the best. The best.
Promises made, promises kept in Butler, Pennsylvania in the summer, as you just heard, right before DJT was shot. A 95-year-old lady asked the president to please help free her son from a Russian prison. He said he would. He didn't forget. Mark Fogel says he was wrongfully detained and has been freed.
I'm a middle-class school teacher who's now in a dream world.
We're going to show you the Lincoln bedroom in a little while. It's a very special place. Appropriate for tonight. Very appropriate.
And thank you all. And I love our country. And I'm so happy to be back here. And I wish I could articulate it better.
You've done beautifully. And he's got a great mother. And when I saw the mother at a rally, she said, if you win, will you get my son out? And I promised. She's 95 years old. And I said, we'll get him out. And we got him out pretty quickly.
47 doing it again. The man brought medical marijuana into the country. And if you are thinking about doing that, you may not want to do it. Once again, this is the second person that I know of.
Yeah, the other one, Brittany Griner.
Griner, yeah, exactly. So they don't play. They're not messing around. So once again, DJT doing a great job there. A top senator is accusing the president's FBI nominee of covertly directing a wave of firings at the department. That's because that senator is probably knee deep in it and terrified of being exposed. They claim that FBI nominee Kash Patel was personally involved in a recent purge of career officials at the Bureau. All they have to do is go back and look at 3 years of videotape. Kash Patel has said all the names, so I mean that's no secret. The committee is expected to vote on Patel's nomination on Thursday. Elon at the White House Tuesday. DJT signed an executive order requiring federal agencies to work with Musk and his Doge team on reducing federal workforces. And a great press conference at the Oval Office talking about waste and corruption in government.
So the reason that departments can't pass audits is because the payments don't have a categorization code. It's like just a massive number of blank checks just flying out the building. So you can't reconcile blank checks. You've got comment fields that are also blank, so you don't know why the payment was made. And then we've got this truly absurd, a do not pay list, which can take up to a year for an organization to get on a do not pay list. And this, we're talking about terrorist organizations, we're talking about known fraudsters, known aspects of waste, known things that do not match any congressional appropriation. It can take up to a year to get on the list, and even once on the list is not used. It's mind-blowing.
It is. And the Senate expected to confirm Tulsi Gabbard as the new director of national intelligence. The former Hawaii congresswoman ran for president, of course, as a Democrat in 2020, dismantled Kamala Khan on stage and then saw how corrupt the Democrats were and then left the party in 2022 and endorsed DJT. 47 says U.S. control of Gaza will lead to peace in the Middle East. Trump met with the King of Jordan Tuesday, and King Abdullah II agreed to take in 2,000 Palestinian children. A teen is dead after a shooting in Commerce City Monday night. Police said the 16-year-old was shot while sitting in the back of an SUV in the 5800 block of Tichy Boulevard. The person driving took him to the hospital where he was later pronounced dead. Police said the suspect, identified as a male juvenile, fled the scene but was located at his home. A short time later, he was taken into custody on charges of second-degree murder. Canned tuna is being recalled at Walmart, Trader Joe's, Kroger, and Costco. Food poisoning from the can. And then there's Representative Maxine Dexter from Oregon, of course.
I've been told I have 30 seconds. So I am going to tell you that we do have to, I don't swear in public very well, but we have to Trump.
Drop the F-bomb.
Woo! Please don't tell my children that I just did that.
Oh, yeah, you're such a sweet person, such a sweet little mommy up there in front of thousands of people. Now millions know it. We're going to let your children know.
There's one Maxine on the left. Here's the other Maxine, just in case you forgot.
President of the United States of America.
Maxine Waters. Oh. News. Got two of them now, Jeff.
Could you imagine that being your alarm in the morning? President of the United States of America.
Oh, that thing wouldn't last long, would it?
Throw the phone out the window.
Yep, absolutely. A brick will be involved. News brought to you by Lair Fireplace and Patio, Denver's premier source for everything fireplace, patio, and grills, locally owned and operated since 1954, online at lairfireplacepatio.com. Blazers at the Nuggets tonight at 7 o'clock. It's 1 degree in Lone Tree. It's 0 in Broomfield and 2 degrees in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue.
I don't swear in public very well, but we have to Trump.
All right, we're just underway. It's Wednesday. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Winter weather advisories are in effect, as well as a cold weather advisory for the overnight hours. Bitterly cold with periods of light snow and flurries. Any additional accumulations will be light, but watch out for slick conditions out there. Temperatures today will be in the lower teens. Tonight, we're going to go below zero, about 4 to 8 below zero, with wind chills to 20 below zero and a few flurries. Not as cold. 30s Thursday, warming to the 40s and low 50s as we get a Chinook on Friday. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Speaking of bulls and animals and stuff, all of ours are tucked in the barn. Just going to be got barn stall mucking to do later this week.
That's no fun.
That is no fun, but it's too cold outside. So, all right, let's get into tariffs here. Spent some time going through the White House response to tariffs. Traditionally, conservatives have been in support of global free trade. I think this thing has changed as people are asking questions about how good our economy is doing. Have we become too consumer-based? So you can get your avocados, you can get your cheap TVs, but there's very little economic mobility. There's more people relying on welfare than at any point before. And so we're struggling here. The two most compelling arguments from the White House, from my perspective, on the role of tariffs as it relates to steel and aluminum is, one, the system's being gamed by other countries. So you have China, for instance, that's subsidizing their steel and aluminum industry, so it's much cheaper in an effort to undercut the American steel and aluminum industries. That's number one. Number two, the dependency on these foreign resources coming from other countries, as opposed to building those resources in our country, is a national security issue. Those are the two reasons, at least the most compelling reasons I see coming from the White House on these tariffs. And even Jon Decker going, we're going to have to see how this all plays out. Bill, you look at this, not a fan of tariffs.
No, because of how they work. And if we go to your beginning there and talk about lack of upward mobility and things like that, tariffs don't help because tariffs make the products more expensive. So I have a hard time understanding how Donald Trump, who said he was going to bring economic development and prosperity to all Americans. And remember, he also said that on day one, he would lower prices. His major economic plan will directly increase prices. That is 180 degrees away from what he promised.
How would you, looking at America's current steel and aluminum markets, improve them?
I don't know. Haven't sat there and gone too deeply as far as what and where. What I wouldn't do is put tariffs on our closest trading partners, Mexico and Canada. I wouldn't do that at all. In fact, I would look for efficiency. The odd thing is, during the previous administration, Donald Trump liked that idea. Remember, he's the one that redid NAFTA, the USMCA. It was a bigger, better, wonderfuler NAFTA. And now he comes back 4 years later and breaks it immediately. So that speaks to trust. As far as America, can you trust America as a trading partner? If I'm looking at the steel industry, I don't know. I would have to look at, I'm not convinced that we need to be making all of our steel in-house, because last time around, yes, there was an increase in steel production, but the trade-off was awful for things like the auto industry. I mean, GM said that they lost more than $750 million due to the trade tariffs because of the increased tariff on steel. $750 million lost one auto manufacturer. That's unrealized profits and gains. That's money that didn't go to shareholders, money that didn't go to workers, money that didn't go to the plants, nothing. They lost that. And they're only one of them. I mean, some of the impact of it was more than $1 billion in some areas. And so that's the problem, is some of the downstream effects. And the U.S. steel industry is small compared to the industries that were impacted by it. There was one company that made nails and made, it's hardware type of things. You'd buy it, Ace Hardware. They had to close an entire factory because of the tariffs. They couldn't afford to make the stuff in America anymore. Exactly what Donald Trump said he was going to do. Bring American manufacturing back. These guys were making this stuff here, but because of his tariffs, it became too expensive, and they closed one of their two factories. Over 100 people lost their jobs. So that's the problem. This is a really bad idea, especially doing it with a lot of our trade partners. But Donald Trump believes that this is how he raises money, and at least says that the other countries are paying for it. And you hear this all the time when he talks about, we are subsidizing Canada with our trade policies. No, we're not. We're paying stuff, and we're getting stuff back. We pay, and they give us stuff. I don't walk into McDonald's and say, hey, give me the Big Mac, and then say, I just subsidized McDonald's. When there is a trade of good or service, that is a business deal. That's what we're doing. We're not sending free money to Canada. We're not sending free money to Mexico. And some of the manufacturing that we wanted to see happen due to NAFTA is happening in Mexico. And now we're going to tank it. It's maddening. It's dumb, but oh well.
There's going to be trade-offs in every economic policy. There's no economic policy where everybody's going to win at all times in every scenario. So Donald Trump, looking at America's steel and aluminum industries, notice that they're being undercut by other countries where their governments are particularly subsidizing in order to make the material necessary for steel and aluminum to be cheaper, and then flooding the U.S. market with that cheap steel and aluminum. So is that better for apartment builders? Yeah, probably. For car manufacturers? Yes. But for the steel and aluminum domestic industries, it's been terrible and has undercut them, destroyed them, caused a job loss. And so if you're the president of the United States and you want to do a few things, one, you want to empower and strengthen those industries in America. And then two, you want to make America less dependent on the other foreign countries, because I do think there's a national security argument there. If we end up in a war with China, for instance, or Russia, and now you're relying upon steel and aluminum from other countries, does it get more complicated? So if you're the president of the United States and you want to empower and strengthen domestic steel and aluminum, how do you do it if you're not going to use tariffs? That's where I'd love to hear from you all. Do you agree with Trump's tariffs? Do you think that this is important for our domestic production? Or is it going to have downstream effects on other industries that's going to cost the American taxpayer even more? Phone lines are open. Give us a call, 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. Speaking of Dan Caplis, I think this guy's great. I've known Dan for well over a decade. He's pro-life, pro-family, pro-faith, pro-America. He's right there with us on the values. That matters, because who you choose to represent you in an injury case says a lot about you to everybody involved in the case, right? You show up in the courtroom or to negotiate with insurance companies, and you hired a guy because you saw him go by on a bus billboard. Really? That's going to tell everybody involved in the case how serious you are and what kind of person you are. This is a guy that's solid on the values. That communicates a lot. But more than just being a great guy, he is a real winner in the courtroom. Okay, listen to this. Dan is believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan is also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. Dan Caplis Law is so trusted that he's the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Dan Caplis Law is a serious firm for serious cases. Dan accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis so that he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. So if you need Dan's help, call this number and just put it in your phone now so you have it there in your contacts, okay? Dan Caplis Law, here's the phone number, 303-770-5551. That's 303-770-5551, or hit dancaplisLaw.com. That's Dan, C-A-P-L-I-S law.com. Let's go to the phone lines. Tony Littleton. Good morning, Tony. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Morning.
Hey, good morning. Well, Jeff, I think you're right. I mean, the problem is complex, and it was over many years, decades, and you don't always have winners. But one of the problems with tariffs is you have to be able to immediately replace whatever product you're putting tariffs against, and that's the problem with most of these tariffs. We can't replace it, and steel was the perfect example. We could produce higher price steel, but then everything else went up with it from American companies buying American steel. Maybe the answer there was to let the Japanese buy that steel plant. They are an ally of ours. Maybe that was the idea, because they were going to put in a ton of investment. They guaranteed to save jobs, blah, blah, blah. But the long-term answer is really kind of close to what Biden did, and Trump, at least at this moment, looks like he erased it. And that was with wind farms. Biden realized you need to have demand, but you need to have supply. So he set up through those bills, he set up for big wind farms. Then he subsidized windmill companies to make these windmills and supply those wind farms. And those companies thought by the year 2030 they could compete with China for globally in wind energy. Trump came in right off the bat, wiped out the wind farms, which thus destroyed the customer base for the windmill companies that we have in this country, including Pueblo.
Are you talking about the subsidized wind farms? Are you talking about Trump shutting down subsidies for wind farms?
He pulled their permits.
Okay.
He pulled their
mandates
permits.
and some of these mandates that we've got to have these wind farms?
It's not mandates. Look, it's everybody in the world knows that wind energy is one of the answers. One of the answers, not the only answer. We're already the largest producer of oil and gas. We know that. That's no secret there. But we need alternative forms of energy. The CEO of ExxonMobil, in a speech to the press just a few weeks ago, said he hopes Donald Trump does not erase all of these alternative energy programs that were put in place by Biden, because he said we've got to find an answer, and oil and gas is going to be the bridge.
Aren't they heavily subsidized? I mean, part of the problem with steel and all this other stuff is that you have so much government interference.
You're complaining. You're making a point that China subsidizes a lot of industries, and yes, they do. Yes, they do. Well, we have a right to subsidize industries as well. The two industries that Biden said, okay, these are the industries of the future, which China agrees with, is alternative energy and chips. And that's where Biden put a ton of money in so we could develop our own production, so we could compete with China. And Trump, believing that anything Biden did has to be bad. And this is not to bash Trump. This is to say the answer was exactly what Biden was doing. He was saying, these are the two industries we want to be in. We don't want to hand them to China, or China's going to be supplying everybody in the world, including us. So he set up an environment whereby our windmill companies 5 years from now could compete with theirs.
So Tony, help me understand, is
Mm-hmm.
your answer to China subsidizing these industries, America subsidizing our own industries?
It has to be a part of the answer. It's super complicated, but as of right now, today, China had a $1 trillion surplus in global trade. They went up 17% last year. The rest of the globe went up 3%. We're part of the rest of the globe. That means a whole bunch of people have minus and zeros and ones, and we're one of them. We're one of them. And China's now so far out in front of us, you have to pick and choose what industries you want to really go out and fight for. Trump is saying steel, and he's always saying drill, baby, drill. But alternative energy is the future energy. And that's the industry that China, they had to laugh when Trump pulled those permits on all the wind farms, which I don't know if it's going to stick, but he pulled them day one. China's got to be thrilled. They've got to be thrilled because they know we can't develop windmill type of technology if we don't have a customer for it. So Biden did exactly what you have to do. Provide the customer, and then provide the incentives for the manufacturer, provide the tax breaks, all of the things that they need to supply that built-in demand in the United States. So Tony, Trump can do it with other industries, but he's got to have both sides, demand and supply, if you want to compete with China.
All right, Tony Littleton, I appreciate the call. Thanks so much. From my perspective, what I'm hearing Tony say is that you respond to government subsidies that are coming from places like China with government subsidies here in places like America. Well, I think we could all argue then it's not a free market if it requires government subsidies in order to be successful. Trump looking at China's interference in the market and going, we respond to it, not necessarily through subsidies, but through tariffs, which then puts the punishment upon those other countries, not necessarily
Got a
the
question for you.
taxpayer, in my opinion.
Why
Go
didn't
ahead.
Trump's tariffs last time work on that? Because you're talking about steel dumping, and that's really just China. That's really who you're talking about. Yes, because you're not talking about Canada, Mexico, Venezuela, Germany, England dumping steel into the American market. I'm just clearing that up. You're talking China, correct?
So,
and if not, who is?
In Trump's tariffs order, he's specifically calling for a removal from these special exceptions that existed on a lot of those countries that you just listed.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering, when you're saying dumping steel, who is it? Because
I think
I'm aware
the primary
of
one is
China.
probably China.
Yeah, but I'm looking at who
the
else.
The other thing
Who
that's
else do
been
you think
taking
is?
place is that they'll send the materials to these other countries. The other countries will then manufacture the steel and then get around the tariffs by essentially running them through the other countries.
Yeah, that's why some of the Chinese companies set up factories in Mexico and warehouses, because they can ship them through Mexico into the U.S. Yeah, and that was part of the small purchase exemption that Trump first took away and now has put back in, because the average consumer said, wait, you realize that my shipping costs and everything else have gone up $50 to $100. I can't get my free stuff and my cheap stuff from China. But when we're talking about dumping, it's primarily China. I just want to clarify that, because you said all these countries. The one that I'm familiar with most is China. And last time Trump was in office, he put a 25% tariff on Chinese steel. That's now increased by 10%, and Biden held it. So we're at 35% tariff on Chinese steel. That's not enough. Is it enough or not? Because if we're talking about if we're talking about stopping the dump, then wouldn't you continue to increase those tariffs over and over again? Again, the problem though with that is it's immediately going to make American steel more expensive. Right. Day one, because what happens
American
is
steel more expensive.
Yep, every single time tariffs make locally produced groups. Nope, every single
help me
time.
Understand how America's
I will. I'll walk you through it right
steel
now.
Gets more expensive.
I'll walk you through it right now. Every time you raise tariffs, domestic produced goods always get more expensive for the consumer, 100% of the time, because of how
so
business
when you say
works.
domestic produced goods, are you talking about the steel that's produced here in America? So help me understand how tariffs on China's steel dumping makes America steel, like made in Pittsburgh, for instance, more expensive.
The TLDR, capitalism. That's the too long didn't read. Is capitalism. Because the issue is this: you're in a market here in America. You now know that your competition, China, has to charge X. So their costs have gone up. So the price for Chinese steel goes up. American steel automatically raises their price to be right underneath that. It is free profits. And that's exactly what happened with American steel last time around during the tariffs. When Donald Trump implemented 25% tariffs on Chinese steel, the American steel immediately got more expensive. Within 48 hours, it went up and was just below where the Chinese tariffs are.
So
because of
that
capitalism.
steel in America, if it gets more expensive, as you said,
yes,
that money's going to American labor.
Yes, but again, who's paying the extra cost?
Right.
American consumers.
Right.
Yeah.
But now you have money going to American labor,
I
which is
understand.
why you get all these
that.
unions celebrating this.
But not necessarily American labor, because you're telling me the steel companies turn around and pay their people more because of that? No, that's profit taking. They view this as an extra profit margin. They didn't turn around and give all their workers raises when those prices increased. Like in Donald Trump's last term, they didn't turn around. They did some capital investment. They didn't hand out a whole bunch of raises. They didn't increase the line workers' salary. That didn't happen. What happened is they took profits. They made more money. They took higher profits. But the bottom line is tariffs make domestically produced goods more
disagree
expensive
with the
for
sense
American
that
consumers.
it just went all the way to the company CEOs. You had more jobs created as a result of these tariffs. And I still haven't heard a good answer. The only answer I've heard so far to deal with the problems we have with China dumping all this cheap steel into America is subsidizing.
We already do that, though, for the steel industry. That's the answer. You want more subsidies. The question I have is, what would you like? Would you like the federal government to subsidize the industry, or do you want the American consumer to pay more? And that's a choice. That's just basically the choice. The difference between
the
subsidies
subsidy
and tariffs
is essentially taxpayer dollars.
Yes, but it doesn't.
So
but it doesn't. Make
I'm going to tax the American people in order to pay this, or the consumer can pay more.
Not necessarily. Our taxes didn't necessarily go up under these subsidies.
Sometimes debt did.
No, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. We can talk about that as far as where you spend the money. But the issue is, do you want to subsidize the industry and have taxpayers help out there, or do you want to have the taxpayers pay more? And the only thing that I can point at right now, and again, reasonable people can disagree on what the right choice is in that situation. But the filter that we need to use in this discussion is the promises made by our current president. And that was to immediately lower prices. Tariffs do not do that. So if he wants to lower prices, and that's one of the top 2 reasons he ran, and he was every single rally talked about lowering prices. Tariffs do not lower prices, even on domestically produced goods. So if that's the goal, you can't use tariffs. But again, that may not be his goal.
Help me understand
done it on
why Janet Yellen would say that tariffs don't raise prices.
Again, I don't know the context or what she's talking about. You just
said
Janet.
I don't believe the American consumer will see any meaningful increases in the prices that they face. And that was when Biden continued Trump's steel tariffs.
Yeah, that would be
added onto it.
That would be a continuation, though.
Right.
And I disagree with her on the American consumer not seeing any increases. But once the tariff is already in there, there's not going to be much of an increase. If Biden puts on a little bit of a tariff, yes, I disagree with her that the prices will increase. They absolutely will increase. But it's going to be a different level. Just because Biden adds in more tariffs, they don't, drastically jack up the prices again. So that would slightly increase. If he's continuing tariffs, that's already baked into the system. So there wouldn't be an additional increase. The increase happens when the tariffs are implemented. And domestic goods immediately rise to just below the level of those tariffs. Happens all the time. And here's the reason why. Capitalism. You would be stupid as a business owner to find out that your competition has to pay a higher cost and you don't raise your prices to be right underneath that. You would be a moron. If you have a car dealership and the guy across the street all of a sudden has to pay more for his cars and his cars go up $3,000, you'd be an idiot to not raise your prices $2,000. You're still undercutting him by $1,000, but you would be an idiot to not understand what the market is telling you right then.
But I also don't think in those formulas you're taking into consideration all the ancillary downstream benefits of this, right? So I'm going back to the original challenge we have. Other countries are subsidizing their industries to the point where they can undercut all the American production and then dump it into our country. Is there a benefit to it? For some industries, absolutely. Okay. But then how do you actually address that problem without either subsidizing it, which the American taxpayer is then going to pay for, or driving up our debt? It seems like one of the more logical ways to do it is to try to penalize the countries that are doing that, bringing harm to some industries, benefiting others. But Trump looking at a decimated steel and aluminum industry here in America that needs to be addressed.
I disagree that it's decimated. I disagree on the idea that the steel industry in America is decimated.
Why would people buy American steel if it's so much more expensive?
How is it more expensive? It's not, because the tariffs make Chinese steel more expensive right now. So that's the idea.
It's not. Of course, it's going to be more expensive than Chinese steel. You got all the labor union impacts.
No, the Chinese, the tariffs raised the price of the steel above where America was, and America just raised the prices to be right underneath China. So but there are also other factors. But the issue being
tariffs are working.
No, the tariffs make consumer goods for America more expensive. So what?
But it's making American steel
hang on a sec.
Competitive.
Wait, hang on a sec. Not necessarily. Hang on a sec. You talked about punishing the other countries that are subsidizing their industries.
Yes.
And your punishment is to charge your own consumers more. I disagree with that being a punishment. So I disagree 110%.
How do you punish the other countries then?
You could do things like subsidies. You could also restrict trade.
But
there's a whole bunch of
things. That's taxpayer funded.
Again,
so we're punishing our people again.
Not necessarily. Depends on how you're getting the money and where you're getting it from. So the taxes. We can do a lot of different things with them. But the bottom line is it doesn't necessarily raise costs and prices. When we're talking about people having a problem making ends meet at the kitchen table, when they're talking about their budget, punishing the other country by raising prices on your own consumers is not an effective way to do it. You're punishing your own consumers.
But
that's like saying you're mad at the kids across the street and grounding your own kids.
If you subsidize it, you're punishing your people too.
How?
Because they're having to pay for it out of tax dollars. Subsidies are paid for by the American taxpayer.
I know, but a lot of things
and then we drive up the debt.
But hang on.
So now everybody's got to pay for this?
Wait, but we can't. Yes, but why? Everybody can because of the government. But hang on a sec. You think that just as a whole. So what I don't understand is you don't think that the government provides any value. So you're saying that every time we take the taxes, so when we're buying all the planes and stuff for the military, that's a bad thing. When we are paying for our police officers, that's a bad thing. When we're paying for our utilities, that's a bad thing.
So those are limited
roads,
enumerated powers.
Thing.
When
that's
when
a bad
the
thing.
federal government directly interferes with the free market here in America, it is absolutely a bad thing. And I totally disagree with Tony that somehow all these windmill subsidies are doing great things for America.
How are tariffs not changing the economy and the playing field in America? Same thing you're talking about.
Here's what I'm trying to figure out, right? You have other countries gaming the system.
What do you mean by gaming the system?
It's not a free market. It's not a free market.
It never is. It hasn't been for decades. Sorry. That's just the world.
But
that
Bill,
is how
that's
the
what
world
I'm trying.
works.
That's what Trump's trying to solve here.
Yeah, and he's solving it by making your stuff more expensive. That's a dumb way to do it.
And
dumb.
And your
Especially
solution
if
is
he
to
said we need to
tax
lower it.
people.
Not necessarily
via
tax
subsidies.
Not necessarily tax people. I'm not looking at increasing taxes. I would shift the tax burden. I would take taxes from other areas.
Right. So you're penalizing people as well.
No, I'm not.
A tax isn't penalizing people?
They already paying it. Oh, so penalty. So every time I pay my taxes is a penalty. So my penalty.
Of course.
So it's a penalty.
An income tax is a
the fact
tax
that I
on
have,
penalty.
So
Anything,
the fact, okay, so the fact that we have a
basic
military is a
economics.
penalty. The fact that we have a military is a penalty. The fact that I have a police department
Bill,
is a penalty.
Whatever
The
you
fact that I
tax, you
have
want less
roads,
of. You
the
know
fact-
that. That's basic economics.
No, not at all. How come our Department of Defense keeps growing? We're being taxed for that, and it keeps growing. I'm
And
not
we're
getting less of it.
$36 trillion in debt.
Am I getting less of it? No, I'm not. Am I?
Taxing,
not getting less
you're
of it.
getting less income.
No, I know, but you said whatever you tax, you're getting less of. I'm
Yes.
just saying.
What, we tax the military? What are you talking
No,
about?
no. But I'm just saying I'm not getting less of the military by the taxes. I'm not constraining the military by the taxes. They're still growing. So the idea is that we can tax and we can provide for things. That's fine, and we can decide as a country if these things are what we want to pay for. If we want to subsidize it because we want to make the American steel industry more competitive, we can decide that. But that would be us. Yes, and that would be fine. If that's what we want to do, yes, I am fine with that. I'm fine with my tax money
but it's a
going
penalty.
to subsidize.
If you're looking at tariffs as penalty, taxes are penalties.
No,
and
see-
so what are the options here?
I disagree.
The
I
American
disagree with
people are
taxes
going
being
to
a
have to pay
penalty.
anyways.
I disagree with the taxes necessarily being a penalty because I look at the taxes being the way that we fund the government that we all need and want. So I don't view that the same way. For tariffs, it is a direct penalty on the price that I am paying for the goods in my life. Taxes don't do the same thing.
Oh man, yeah, this is where you and I disagree.
That's fine.
Taxes are the penalty based upon the government holding a gun. All right, we'll get to all these calls and texts. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Billy and I kicking it off early this morning on tariffs. And as you can imagine, the text messages are on both sides of this saying that Bill's right, Jeff's right. Look, how do you solve a problem like
Maria?
China?
Sorry.
Maria?
Yeah, that was a Sound of Music
okay.
reference. How do you solve a problem like Maria? Sorry. I'm an idiot.
The China dumping cheap steel into America. How do you deal with it? Do you subsidize the steel industry here to try to respond to it? Do you implement tariffs? What allows for more benefit for the American people? Join the conversation. Give us a call, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. Coming up, a little bit of levity with You Choose the News. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. I know it's cold out there. We got delayed schools, at least in Elbert and Douglas County.
Yeah, Cherry Creek's on delay as well.
Is it? Are they?
Losers. Sorry. I'm a little
just quiet.
surly about that.
Well, Bill, you and I grew up here.
Yeah.
I went through most of my education without having snow days.
Oh, yeah.
And now I feel like it's every other week.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing is, I know that people are like, kids are soft these days. No, it's not that. Because I've got, multiple members of my family in the education system. Kids are stupid. And part of it is because of stupid parents. And here's the reason why. Your kids show up at the bus stop or at school in shorts when it's 2 degrees outside. Your kids are stupid and you don't help. And that's the issue. You let your kid walk outside without a jacket. That's why they have a delayed start, because too many kids are allowed outside the house in shorts, in a skirt, not wearing a jacket, not dressed for the weather. If parents would do their job and make sure the kids were dressed right, we wouldn't have these days. But nope, not at all. That's the reason. I'm 110% serious about this. The reason we have these cold days and these delayed starts is because sometimes there's road and bus schedules.
I see it.
The kids are stupid.
Calling the herd. So, all
right. Yeah, the kid that only has 3 fingers has it less than for everybody else. Yes. All righty. It is the time of the morning where we get to make questionable decisions, something we call America's favorite radio game show. You Choose the News. Yes, I have spent moments this morning looking through the interwebs to find really dumb stories about us humans, giving them even more ridiculous headlines so that we can play this fake radio news game show. Why? Because nobody in charge has any idea that we are this irresponsible with valuable airtime. This is a secret. Nobody knows we're doing this except just you that are listening. So shh, keep it a secret. You know what I'm saying? All righty. Blake Olson, of course, joins us from the newsroom. Gentlemen, here are your stories today. Headline number 1, it's obviously DEI's fault. Headline number 2, real life Oscar the Grouch. Headline number 3, Britney Spears never went this far. And headline number 4, calling all bounty hunters.
Let's
Mr.
start
Hunt.
with the bounty hunters, please.
Yes, calling all bounty hunters. Here we are going to the wonderful country of Norway. The global seafood company Mowi is offering a bounty to any fisherman who can catch escaped salmon. 27,000 fish went missing from their farm right off the Norwegian coast. It's a problem because they were alien salmon. It's a disaster for the wild salmon. They're trying to keep their local salmon sourced to be clean. Normally, fish farmers are only allowed to conduct and recapture operations within 500-meter zone around the facility. But in the event of an escape this large, they are widening the zone. So now bounty hunters have been called in because the escaped salmon pose a huge environmental problem. They'll endanger wild salmon populations by reducing their genetic diversity, competing for food, and increasing infection from sea lice and intensify competition for spawning grounds. So if you fancy yourself a bounty fisherman, you got some money. Just saying.
That sounds fun.
They'll pay about $36 a fish.
The dog, the big bad dog. The
I was thinking about that.
bounty
The first thing I thought is, can dogs swim? I just want to know because this would be right up his alley. Okay, Blake Olson in the news department, sir. It's DEI's fault. Real life Oscar the Grouch or Britney Spears never went this far.
Real life Oscar the Grouch.
Real life Oscar the Grouch. We're going to England for this one. A man who believes his $700 million Bitcoin fortune that is buried in a landfill can be rescued, but only if he is allowed to buy the landfill. Computer engineer James Howells from Wales said in the summer of 2013, his ex-partner mistakenly took a hard drive containing his Bitcoin wallet to a garbage dump. He claims the cryptocurrency now contains his worth an estimated $766 million. He's been fighting to get access to the landfill. So far, the city says no, but now the city is saying we're going to close the landfill. So James wants to buy it. So yeah, just like Oscar the Grouch, he loves trash.
Nice.
He wants to buy a landfill and go searching for his lost money. I think he should.
One man's trash is another man's treasure.
Exactly, and I think he should. I mean, he should set up a webcam. He should watch us. Yeah,
what else are you going to do in your day that's better than look for
Exactly.
$760 million that you know is in like a 1 square mile location?
Yeah, exactly, but in a little tiny hard drive. And there's been trash dumped on it for years. So this would be interesting. You could almost make this into some sort of Lifetime series or something. All right. Final choice this morning.
I mean, that is like the Oak Island.
It is, basically. All right, Mr. Hunt. It's DEI's fault or Britney Spears never went this far.
So Britney Spears.
Yeah, Britney Spears never went this far. A Brazilian woman has taken a toxic relationship to a whole new level. In a shocking incident from São Paulo de José Rio Preto, Brazil, a 43-year-old husband found himself the target of perhaps the most intimate murder plot ever conceived. The wife invited her unsuspecting husband to have a little bit of coitus, but she had put poison around her naughty bits and asked him to, do some stuff. He noticed the smell was off and decided not to. Went to the police. There was an investigation. Yes, she poisoned the, below the equator. That's all I'm going to say because I'm going to get in trouble.
I'm confused.
Wow. Yeah, I know.
I need some help.
You need a comprehensive
Okay, we got to get out of
sex
here.
education. You need Jeff and Bill show.
KNUS.
7 a.m. in the Mile High City on this very cold Wednesday, February 12th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. With Jeff and Bill from News Talk 710 ANUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Congratulations. You just woke up in the greatest country in history. Donald Trump's your president. Let's get after it. We got a whole show planned for you of engaging discussions, critical analysis, but most importantly, your phone calls and texts, because this is where Denver's voice is heard loud and clear. So grab a cup of coffee, Denver, and let's dive into the issues that matter most to you right here, right now. Coming up in just a second, Joshua Sharf's going to join us, senior fellow in fiscal policy with the Independence Institute. Oh, the state capitol trying to figure out what to do with its minimum wage fiasco as restaurants, particularly in Denver, are closing daily, it seems like, because they can't keep up. We'll get into some of their plans to try to adjust and address that. And then in the 8 o'clock hour, Mercedes Schlapp's going to join us. You know that name. She's with CPAC. She's going to be giving us an update on what CPAC is going to look like this year. That's the Conservative Political Action Conference in Washington, D.C. Then Billy and I are going to get into the Musk-Trump Oval Office discussion yesterday, USAID, the health websites that were shut down, then brought back, and all the lawsuits Donald Trump is facing. Goodness gracious, we got a lot to cover. Let's go to the phone lines real quick. Jim Sterling. Good morning, Jim. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Morning.
Good morning, and thanks, you guys. I appreciate all that you do. You know, I was going to go back to the snow skiing thing, but when we used to pull each other by horses, you know, when I was a kid.
Oh, a little ski joring, huh?
Well, with four-wheelers and stuff that we have on the farm. So we would, when we get snow, I mean, so Dad would fire up the four-wheeler, or we'd pull it by a horse too, and he would drag me and my sisters behind the horse or behind the four-wheeler. And those were some days, man. I mean, you hit one of them hard frozen cow turds, they don't feel so good on the sled.
No, they don't. And you don't really even need skis, because those cowboy boots, if you can get up on your toes and you don't drag your heels, you don't even need skis. I did that too.
Dad took our water skis. We had a ski
that's
boat.
Smart. That's smart.
So Dad took he took the fins off the back of the skis.
Yeah.
And then then we would put our snow skis on, or the water skis on, and then we'd use the ski rope off the boat, and then he would drag us through the pasture.
Oh, that is much nicer than my friends that own Christensen Brother Farms out in eastern Colorado, because they would give us a short rope and pull us behind the four-wheelers and just say, remember to keep your heels up, or, well, you'll find out. and you found out. Yes, real quickly.
Oh, no, when you fall down, it ain't,
but yeah, it hurts. Oh.
Now, so you really did that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The thing is, and it's a weird story. I'll try to make this as quickly as possible. When my mother grew up in Wisconsin, and when she moved out here and was a teacher, first time she had a teaching job, she had two friends that she kind of connected with, and they were teaching in Fort Morgan, Colorado. That's where they set up. That's where they were.
Fort Morgan?
Yeah, Fort Morgan.
That's just east of me.
And so that's that's right near you. Yeah. And so they were there teaching, and they made friends with a local rancher, and it were the people that owned the Christian Brothers Farms. Met a couple of boys that,
I know that
dad.
name.
Yeah. And so they ended up, one of the women that was a teacher, friend of my mother's, ended up marrying Larry, who's one of the Christensen brothers. And so this was a lifelong friendship that they continued. And as kids, we would go up there and spend weekends, some of the summer vacation. There were times where, my parents would send me to go work on the ranch for a month or so. And they're like, here, go. This is fun with your friend.
You did spend some time. So your livelihood, you did spend some of your childhood up out here on the ranch.
Yeah. And at times, I thought at the time that Mom and Dad were doing something nice for me. I didn't realize they were just trying to get me the hell out of the house. And so I've been there, man. I have been in the middle of the summer.
That you learned.
Oh, God.
Look at the lessons that
the thing is,
I look back at the lessons. The lessons that you learned, the livelihood of nature and everything else.
Getting up early and having to make sure you feed the cattle, going out and making sure. Oh, it took me forever to figure out how to. The corn, yep.
Water.
To drop the irrigation tubes. Oh, when I finally got the first tube, when I put my hand over it and threw it.
Tubes in a canvas?
Oh yes. Oh yeah, man. I did all of it. I stood in the top of that barn in the middle of July and sweat my something off. I know how that just sucks. And you're there because you know it's all dusty and you're grabbing the big hooks and pulling those hay bales in. I did all of that stuff, and it really did teach me a lot about the value of hard work. That when you go out, you do it yourself. That's what it is, man.
You. I got a little more respect for
I appreciate you, Jim. Thank you so much, man.
I got a lot more respect for you now because you realize what it takes to get these things to the grocery store. And I did not know this about you, but now you understand. Yeah.
Oh, I understand, man. I understand. I've ridden those tractors. I've plowed the fields. I've run the combines. I've driven cars before I was of age. All the great stuff you do on the farm. Oh, John Deere. I love me the John Deeres because of the
John
classic.
Deere 4020.
Yeah.
John Deere 4020, 4640.
You know, I'm so far out of that world. I don't know the models anymore.
I know.
And the thing is, okay, and I got to tell you, this is the reason.
Jim, I'm a Kubota guy.
Oh, Kubota. Okay, that's the reason I like the John Deeres. One, because that was the classic ones that I had as a kid, and that's the ones that I played with. I have a real affinity for Caterpillar. But the John Deere tractor, the reason I fell in love with it, that was the one on the entire farm of all the tractors they had. That was the one that had air conditioning and a radio in it. So if I could drive that one, that's the only reason, man. The rest of them, like, this sucks. Yeah, that's the entire reason. I have gone over prairies and fields in the back of a pickup truck. And one of the strangest and dumbest decisions I ever made was I had friends and they were
Don't admit it.
Oh no, this is okay, but this is just kind of questionable. We were in the mountains. They'd come up and they were visiting us. We were doing some stuff in the mountains, and we were going to go home with them back to Fort Morgan. They were going to go over the Continental Divide. Well, you know, my buddies that were the kids, the Christensen kids and myself, we decided to ride in the back of the pickup truck doing that. And it started to rain part of the way through there.
We all did that.
Oh yeah, but it started to rain part of the way through, and the adults inside the cab were laughing at us, and we were wet and cold, and it hurt. But I still remember that. There's a lot of things you learn growing up being on a farm. A lot of really great things that some city kids don't learn.
No, that's true. Do you think it brings? I got to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do you think it brings out the core nature in a person?
I think in some ways, I think city kids can get that, but I think what it does is it teaches self-reliance. Yeah, it teaches self-reliance. The idea that there are times when you're a kid on the farm, you got to do it yourself. And you got to make sure it gets done. The other part that I think is valuable about being on the farm as a kid and working there is the idea of community. The idea everybody's pulling together and that you've got your job to do. And if you don't do that job, you let everybody else down. And that there's somebody else that has to come and do that. If you don't get up early enough.
There's a lot of truth to that.
That's the thing, is you don't want to let the rest of the farm down. So if you don't get up and you're not out there feeding the calves at the right time, someone else has got to do it. If you're not out there and you don't drop those irrigation tubes right, somebody else has got to do it. And so it's the idea of making sure that you take pride enough in your work so that no one else has to make up for your mistakes. That taught me a lot.
I got to ask you a question.
Yeah.
This is how we see our country. And that's kind of I'll speak for myself. What Trump is doing, if you don't take initiative to take care of the job that needs to be taken care of, you're better with words than I am. But Trump is trying to take care of the initiative. He knows what needs to get done, and he's trying to get it done.
I can appreciate
and that's
that.
The way it is on the farm. That's the way it is in business. I don't care if you're running a pizza store. Doesn't matter of that. But the whole spectrum of it all comes down to that same analogy. Or did I say that right? Or help me out.
That is, you're right. But I understand what you're saying about Trump, and I can appreciate that. The issue that I've got where I break with you on that is that I know that Trump has never framed a building. I know that he's never poured concrete. I know that he's never hammered a nail, and that he's always had the other people to do that for him. If he was someone that had started his own company, as in, he put on the hard hat and he went and he brought the lunch pail to work, then I would have a little bit more of that type of respect that you'd have for him.
When was the first time you started a radio show?
Oh, God, 18? Yeah. 18?
No. Not work for a radio company. When did you start your own?
Actually, we'll have to take this up another day. I was first employed when I was 21. That was the first time that I was gainfully employed.
Employment. But what business did you ever start?
I didn't start one, but there's a question about
Have you
Donald
ever
Trump.
started a business? Have you ever started a business?
No, I haven't, but I don't think that's necessarily disqualifying. And Donald Trump took over the the real estate industry for his father as well. So he was
Jim,
handed that
we've got to
business.
run. We've
Jim.
got Joshua Sharf coming up here, but now news and comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
All right, thanks a lot, Jeff and Billy. 2 degrees and cloudy in Denver, expecting a high of 13 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story, hundreds of flights delayed at DIA Tuesday as cold weather and snow moved into the region. According to FlightAware, more than 800 flights were delayed and around 15 were canceled. Travel woes could continue today as a winter weather advisory is in place until around 11 o'clock this morning for most of the Front Range. The Senate expected to vote this morning on confirming Tulsi Gabbard as the new Director of National Intelligence. She saw the corruption on the left as a Democrat, then saw the light, made the switch, embarrassed Kamala Khan on stage in that debate, and then endorsed Trump eventually. And on Monday, Senate Republicans voted to advance her nomination.
I feel like the luckiest man on earth right now. And I want you to know that I am not a hero in this at all. And President Trump is a hero.
Promises made, promises kept. Mark Fogel was wrongfully detained in a Russian prison for 4 years, and Trump helped to free him. Now, his mom came up to Trump. She's 95 years old in Butler, Pennsylvania, right before Trump was shot in that assassination attempt. And she asked him to free Fogel, and Trump, DJT, never forgot.
These men that came from the diplomatic service are heroes. The senators and representatives that passed legislation in my honor to get me home are the heroes.
So he brought medical marijuana into the country. Brittany Griner kind of did the same thing. So a little note here, if you go to Russia, may want to not bring pot. 47 defended Elon and Doge at a White House event on Tuesday. Trump signed an executive order requiring federal agencies to work with Musk and his Doge team on reducing workforces. The presser was absolutely fascinating to me, at least, with Elon.
The bureaucracy is in charge. And then what meaning does democracy actually have? If the people cannot vote and have their will be decided by their elected representatives in the form of the president and the Senate and the House, then we don't live in a democracy. We live in a bureaucracy. So it's incredibly important that we close that feedback loop, we fix that feedback loop, and that the public's elected representatives, the president, the House, and the Senate, decide what happens, as opposed to a large unelected bureaucracy.
He and his team are plowing through and exposing all the corruption in government. The Trumpster says that U.S. control of Gaza will lead to peace in the Middle East. King Abdullah II was at the White House Wednesday and agreed to take in 2,000 Palestinian children. Israel is threatening an end to the Gaza ceasefire deal if Hamas does not release Israeli hostages by noon on Saturday. The warning from Prime Minister Netanyahu comes after Hamas announced it would postpone the next round of the hostage prisoner swap. California Commie Governor Gavin Newsom says that debris removal at the Eaton Fire burn zone east of LA moved into its second phase. Newsom says about 7,400 homeowners near Pasadena have opted in to have their properties cleared out. The Army Corps of Engineers, or corpse, if you are Obama, aims to complete the removal in 30 days. Police investigating after 2 people were injured at a Greenwood Village light rail station. Officers responded to the Dayton RTD station on Tuesday afternoon after gunshots were reported. One person was found with a gunshot wound and another was reportedly assaulted. Witnesses told investigators that multiple suspects ran from the station following the incident. No arrests have been announced. Costco is the latest retailer to limit egg purchases. Grocery stores have been seeing empty shelves in the egg department since late last year. Anna Paulina Luna says she believes there were 2 gunmen in JFK's assassination attempt. Luna will be leading a task force on the declassification of federal secrets.
Our first investigation will be announced, but it's going to be covering on a thorough investigation into the John F. Kennedy assassination. And I can tell you, based on what I've been seeing so far, the initial hearing that was actually held here in Congress was actually faulty in the single bullet theory. I believe that there were 2 shooters, and we should be finding more information as we are able to gain access into the SCIF, hopefully before the files are actually released to the public.
And the announcement, yes.
Did you hear the people that she wants to talk to?
I did not.
She wants to talk to the doctors that treated JFK, and she wants to talk to the Warren Commission, and she wants to talk to some of the investigators.
They're not alive, are they?
No. They are not.
I don't think
none of them are
alive.
alive. Yes, during her conversation yesterday, she talked about wanting to bring in a bunch of people for the commission that she's starting, and
Gotcha.
they're dead.
Yeah, they're dead, but they're
Yeah.
probably receiving money from a USAID.
Nicely done.
Thank you. No, I'm right there with you. Blazers at the Nuggets. Of course, there were 2 shooters. Blazers at the Nuggets tonight at 7:00. It's about 1 or 2 in Highlands Ranch, 1 or 2 degrees in the Boulder area, and 2 degrees in Denver. A cold one. Jeff and Billy continue.
No, I worked for 20 years for USAID, and my daughter works for them. That simply is not happening.
Oh, yes, it is. It's going to continue right now. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Winter weather advisories are in effect, as well as a cold weather advisory for the overnight hours. Bitterly cold with periods of light snow and flurries. Any additional accumulations will be light, but watch out for slick conditions out there. Temperatures today will be in the lower teens. Tonight, we're going to go below 0, about 4 to 8 below 0, with wind chills to 20 below 0 and a few flurries. Not as cold. 30s Thursday, warming to the 40s and low 50s as we get a Chinook on Friday. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill show. So, headline out of the Denver Post: Colorado restaurant would receive wage-related lifeline under proposed bill. A tip credit for restaurant owners would rise along with their local minimum wage. So I tried to decipher this article. It what Representative Stephen Woodrow, Woody Woodrow, if you know that guy, you know he's a disaster down at the state capitol. He's tried to put together this plan, and I'm sitting here trying to read it because you hear about Denver restaurants closing all the time because they can't afford it anymore. No one wants to go downtown, and then you have all these minimum wage requirements. It's just too expensive to run a business, and these great restaurants are closing down all the time in the city of Denver. So I needed some help. I texted my friend Joshua Sharf, senior fellow in fiscal policy at the Independence Institute, to try to help me understand what Democrats are proposing down at the state capitol to try to solve this problem that, from my perspective, they created with all these minimum wage laws. But let's talk to Joshua. Good morning. Thanks for joining the Jeff and Bill show.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jeff. Good morning, Bill.
Well, are you staying warm there, Joshua?
Trying. It's like, as we just heard, single digits out here. It's all, boy, that just showed up out of nowhere, didn't it?
No, you got to love Colorado. It's like 60 degrees last week, and then the week before that, freezing cold. So, Joshua, I'm trying to figure out what Democrats down at the state capitol are proposing, because it's a real problem. These minimum wage laws have seriously harmed and been part of the formula that have resulted in all these businesses shutting down in Denver. So help me understand what you think they're trying to do at the state capitol to deal with this.
So the minimum wage, we think of the minimum wage as being a number, and that's set. There's a federal minimum wage, there's a state minimum wage, there are various city or county minimum wages, and so they can add on. You can't subtract. So I think the federal minimum wage, I think, is still $7.25. Is that right? And then the state, of course, is considerably above that. And then Denver has got its own minimum wage, which I think is now up to something like $18.81 or something like that. So those are, we think of that as being the base rate, the least that somebody can earn on an hourly basis. And yet there are exceptions. There is an exception specifically for workers who are considered tipped workers. And for the federal rule for that is that you have to earn $30 a month in tips when you're considered a tipped worker. There are some states, a few states, doesn't break down along red and blue, but there are a few states where it's $20 a month. But for the most part, you consider $30 a month, you're considered a tipped worker. And so what they've done is, well, if you're getting a significant amount of your wages from tips, then you're already getting that money, and so you don't have the you allow the employer to claw some of that back from what they have to pay, and so that's called a tip credit that individual, for instance, and it primarily, although not exclusively, but primarily applies to wait staff at restaurants. That's what it's intended to do. And so if, for instance, in Colorado, which is what we're talking about here, the minimum wage, and this is according to Paycor, the minimum wage is $14.81. The maximum tip credit is $3.02, which means that the employer has to pay $11.79 as the minimum wage, and this is at the state level. $11.79 is what the employer makes. The employee, they assume, will make at least $3.02 in tips on a given hour, averaging that out, and so they still end up with the minimum wage. That's how that works.
And in this case, Stephen Woodrow, Denver Democrat, looking at all these businesses closing in Colorado, what is his solution then in his proposed bill?
So what he wants to do, he wants to say for localities that have a higher minimum wage. So let's say that Denver, let's as the example in the article is that Denver has a minimum wage of $18.81. So that's $4 above the state minimum wage, which is $14.81. So what he would do is he would raise in Denver that tip credit from $3.02 to $7.02. So instead of the restaurant having to pay,
$11.79, right?
$15.79, then it would go back to $11.79 would be what the restaurant has to pay. So what the situation that he's specifically dealing with, the situation that he's specifically dealing with is that Denver restaurants at this point are paying above the state minimum wage out of pocket, even with the tip credit. They're paying $15.79, and so this would drop it back down to $11.79. And then for any other locality that had a higher minimum wage than the state, it would do the same thing. It would just tack on that additional minimum wage into the tip credit so that they wouldn't have to pay more than the state than they would in any other part of the state.
We're talking with Joshua Sharf. He's a senior fellow in fiscal policy with the Independence Institute. So, Joshua, all right, it's complicated. Here's what I want to boil it down to, and I need your help because you're a smart guy. Progressives are in the business of social engineering. And one of the ways they've socially engineered is through these artificially inflated wages as a result of minimum wage. And so the consequence of this is that Denver restaurants cannot afford to do business. They're already on very small margins, 3-4%. Now it's so expensive, they can't deal with it. Therefore, they're closing down because who just wants to start a business to lose money? You start a business to make money. They can't do it. So they're shutting down restaurants. Democrats are going, gee golly, our social engineering seems to have some consequences. Let's get into more social economic engineering to try to address this. Minimum wage too high. We need to now adjust the tax tip credit. And it just feels, from my perspective, and I could be wrong, but Joshua Sharf, it feels like it's just more government meddling, trying to solve a problem that they're responsible for creating. What's your take?
Yeah. So I want to add a little. I don't think that's wrong, but I want to add a little nuance to it. That does not necessarily make Colorado look better, by the way, but I think it's important to have some context here. The idea of a tip credit is actually a national idea. This is not unique to Colorado. There's a federal tip credit. So you have a federal minimum wage of $7.25. There's a maximum tip credit of the maximum that's under for federal law is $5.12, and so you would have a minimum wage at that point of $2.13. And a lot of states do that. It turns out that once you account the Colorado's minimum wage, the state's flat minimum wage, not Denver's in particular, but Colorado's minimum wage is the 11th highest in the country. All right, so and I mean that's including places like California and the Northeast is where you tend to see California, Oregon, Washington are higher. There are a few states in the Northeast that are higher. And so we are 11th in the country, which you wouldn't think of. It turns out that once you account, since our maximum tip credit is $3.02, we are the highest tipped minimum wage in the country. Not accounting for, again, California has sort of weird, has all sorts of municipal rates and that we're not going to account for, but excluding sort of the variations that California has, we are the highest tipped minimum wage in the country before you get to Denver, before you get to cities with higher minimum wages, which means that what Woodrow and Amabile are proposing, all right, wouldn't help, would still keep Denver restaurants at the highest tipped minimum wage in the country. Again, aside from the local fluctuations in California. So they're not actually, they're not actually pulling it back to be competitive anywhere else. They're just making it less expensive in Denver, but it's still tremendously expensive in Colorado, and you still see places closing in other parts of the state for the same reason.
Isn't this just an effort to reduce the minimum? I mean, it's it feels like they jump out there with this minimum wage, and then they provide this tip tax credit thing, and it feels like an effort to reduce. So they run out there selling $18 minimum wage, but then they realize they can't actually deliver on that, so they've got to offer all of these tip tax credit things to try to lower it.
Well, like I say, that's actually a national thing. Almost all states have. There's a federal rule. A lot of states just abide by the federal rule and say that there's a $7.25 minimum wage and a $5.12 tax credit. So the employer is paying $2.13 an hour. So there's and then the waitress or waiter is expected to make up the rest on tips. So that's actually a pretty common thing. I guess my point here is that what they're doing is having the 11th highest minimum wage in the country, and then having a fairly low tip credit, which is $3.02. We end up with the highest minimum wage the restaurants have to pay in the country. And that's before you get to Denver. And all this bill would do is bring Denver's exorbitant, $15 an hour down to the states, which is $11.79, which is still the highest in the country. So it doesn't, and by the way, you'll notice what he's doing here. They're not, they say that this came into effect when the state started, when they passed the bill to increase the minimum wage each year. And so the tip credit hasn't increased, but they're not looking to go back and solve that problem. They're not going to take money out of the state's pocket. They're not, right. They're not going to take money. They're going to take money out of Denver's pocket, I suppose, which doesn't sadden me, but I mean, it's not going to take, they're not going to make the state pay this price. And they're not going to bring the state into line with other states. They're just going to say, well, we'll solve this. We'll solve this problem in Denver. We're not going to try and solve it statewide. And of course, as you pointed out, there are other, and the article sort of breezily mentions that there are other things that are causing restaurants to have problems. The price of ingredient of food has gone way up. Rent has gone, and by the way, the way that they want to do development, of course, by squeezing it into development corridors. That's true for retail, because retail is going to be where the people are. So you're going to increase, if you're going to force people to live along these development corridors, that's where you're going to get the restaurants, and it's going to drive up rent, and it's going to limit the number of restaurants. So then you're going to drive up costs there, right? The cost of electricity is up 20. This is for commercial establishment. I looked this up earlier just before the show. It's up about 20% since 2020. The cost of electricity to commercial establishments, and the cost of natural gas to commercial establishments since 2020. In 2023, it was up, which is the latest we have the annual numbers for. It was up 65%. In 2023 over 2020, and it had been going down. That rather rudely reversed course in right after COVID. And of course, as you pointed out, people don't want to. Crime is an issue in Denver in particular, and then just getting people to be able to work. To getting people to fill these positions. The number of other factors that government has contributed to, but this is going to be the solution, right?
And it just again, we're putting so much of this in the hands of bureaucrats and elected officials and politicians, and not allowing the market to work itself out. And just the central planning drives me crazy. Joshua Sharf joining us from the Independence Institute. Josh, thanks so much for taking time to help me understand the type of engineering that Woody Woodrow's trying to bring to the problems we're facing in Denver. I appreciate it.
It's good to see he's just as toxic on Capitol Hill as he was on social media.
Joshua Sharf, follow him on X. He's a lot of fun at Joshua Sharf. That's JOSHUASHARF. Always good to talk to you. You're doing great work at the Independence Institute. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jeff. Thanks, Jeff and Bill, for having me on.
Take care.
All right, Joshua Sharf and tax tip credit adjustments.
Yeah,
and all that.
It's interesting. And I'm not necessarily opposed to what they're doing. What I can't figure out, and maybe I missed it in Joshua's explanation, is how you're either going to tell current workers lower wages, or if you hang on to them, then are you paying the new employees lower? And the new employees are going to be real sour about that one. I can't figure out how you transition into this lower wage system.
Yeah, I don't know if you're lowering the wage. You're just lowering the requirement upon the business to provide it. But I guess it would be a lower wage.
Yeah. And so the idea being that if you're coming in at the wages now, and if you're a new hire, let's say that I'm working right now at the restaurant and I'm at the old wage, and then this passes and you come in at the new wage, you're going to feel shorted. You're going to feel like it's a disincentive for you to actually take that job because everybody else is already getting paid a higher wage and there's nothing you can do about it.
And to Joshua's point, you have all these other problems that are causing people not to want to spend money at these restaurants. They're not addressing that. Again, this is where I get into the central planning, the tweaking, and the idea that Woody Woodrow is going to provide any idea on how to improve a restaurant. And then listening to this, you need to have a darn accounting degree to run a business to figure this stuff out. Goodness gracious. Here's the question I have. Does any of this actually change things for the city of Denver? Do people want to go to the city of Denver? Do people want to go to restaurants? It is so expensive to eat out right now. Are you eating out? And is this minimum wage interference that's coming from the governor affecting all this, killing these businesses? I would love to hear from you. Join the conversation. We don't go out all that much anymore, and it's basically going to be like holidays and celebrations. It's just so expensive.
The weird thing for us in our family is we have transitioned away from fast food and towards more sit-down restaurants. Because the difference,
I was going to say it's not a big difference. I saw
exactly
McDonald's is having big problems out there.
Oh yeah, their sales are really having a problem, and that's part of it is that we know that at the end of the meal, sitting down and spending time with the family, it can be slightly more expensive, but there's no real large difference.
Yeah,
I mean we're talking,
and the quality of food is so different.
Yeah, I mean we can go to restaurants in our neighborhood, and the end bill will be plus or minus $10 of what we spend at fast food. And of course, in the spending at fast food, you're doing all the meals. You buy the thing that comes with the fries and the drinks or whatever it is. And that becomes just as expensive as sitting down at the restaurant. And so if we are going to do fast food in our house, what we do is everybody gets to choose an entree. And then we buy a bunch of sides, not one for every person. We pool those, and then we have drinks at home. It's the only way to make that efficient. It's the only way. But other than that, and that's what you have to realize is that I'm hoping that the fast food industry realizes that we are constraining our purchases with them because of the prices. And when we want to go out there and have a full dinner, we will go and sit down. We're much happier to sit down and spend that money at the restaurant in our neighborhood than just driving through. And again, the car and depending on where people want to go and how far away it is, and sometimes the food is cold. And then of course, that you can't make any adjustments. Like how many times, Jeff, this has probably happened to you in the family. How many times you get that burger from the fast food place and you come home and you're like, oh, this was the last bun in the bag. It's been out for about 3 hours because it's a little hard. Yeah, it's a little stale. And so you're like, hey, but I can't do anything because I already drove away from the stupid restaurant. I mean, the other day I was having worst day ever. I vented about this with you. I was having a horrible day and went to a fast food place. They shorted me. Not one, but 2 fries. I was so mad. I didn't check the bag. I should have checked the bag. Lesson for me.
The bag.
Yeah. Come home. I check the bag. 2 fries are not there. So I'm mad that day. So what I do the scan of the QR code thing. And I even call the restaurant. I do 2 different ways to try to get a hold of the restaurant to say, hey, you forgot my fries. The restaurant code at the top of the receipt, the way I identify the restaurant that did this to me. The company says that restaurant doesn't exist. I have no recourse at all. My website won't take me. The QR code won't take me because I don't have the right restaurant code. And it's the restaurant code that is printed at the top of the receipt. Yeah, that was great. That was wonderful. And you wonder why we're eschewing the drive-through options and instead sitting down at that restaurant because you can get those things custom done. You can deal with those issues right away and you get personalized service. You think that's why we're making the choice.
Well, join the conversation. Phone lines are open, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. Look, if the last couple of years have taught us one thing, it's to value the things we can control, like Bill A's fry incident. Addressing hair loss is no exception. Our friends at Advanced Hair Restoration can reverse years or even decades of hair loss with their simple one-day treatment. Your own natural hair begins to regrow the very next day, and your new hair is backed by the Advanced Hair Guarantee. It works for bald spots, receding hairlines, thinning hair, men, women, younger, wiser. Advanced Hair can address many different patterns of hair loss. Advanced Hair's top-rated physicians like Dr. Tanya Pauls have changed tens of thousands of people's lives, and now it's your turn. Schedule your free consultation by calling 720-459-HAIR. And to celebrate the new year, get special financing, 250 free hair grafts, and $250 off. Value the things you can control and start regrowing your own natural hair today. That's 720-459-HAIR, or become inspired with the before and after pictures at advancedhair.com. That's advancedhair.com. We'll continue with the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. The city of Denver struggling as restaurants can't keep open. Part of the problem are the minimum wage requirements. So the lawmakers in Denver and down at the state capitol are trying to adjust the tip credit. To me, it all reeks of, oh, goodness, we created a problem. Now we got to try to adjust it. But they'll never actually address the real problem, which are crime and minimum wage laws. But we'll get to that. Let's go to the phone lines. Marcus, Denver. Good morning, Marcus. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yeah, how are you guys doing this morning?
Good. How are you doing? Staying warm?
Yeah.
Good.
So I was listening to you, and almost all my friends and neighbors and guys in the trades, we will not go downtown to eat. And people that work in a restaurant business around us, they will not go down there due to parking tickets and safety. But I asked you guys this question. When was the last time Jeff, Billy, and Blake ate downtown? Last time.
Gosh, a long time ago. And and what I hate was I used to really love going down there. When we used to host the summit, people would go out to bars and restaurants and walk 16th Street Mall. I don't do that. And I don't know if it's because my kids are all teenagers. I'm just a different stage of life where I don't go out to eat at all. Really.
Yeah, and we went downtown during the holiday season was the last time we went down to the Christmas market, near the city and county building. Went down there, saw the drone show, but we did not eat. That was something that we made the choice in part because of just, how long it can take, locations and price. We made the choice to eat at home. And then we ran out later afterwards. So, we lost everybody on the phone.
We lost Marcus.
I think we lost everybody. So, and John was sitting there, and John, if you're listening, I don't know what happened. The phone system just went boop, and so it burped on us.
Got
and
cold.
So, yeah, I don't know. We didn't hang up on y'all, but
we'll
I'm so
continue.
sorry.
Call us back in. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS. Johnny, call back. We'll make you first up, man.
the Jeff and Bill Show. The city of Denver is struggling as businesses continue to close, and lawmakers are struggling to figure out what to do, but not really addressing the root cause of the problems from my perspective. Let's go to the phone lines. Jon Denver. Good morning, John.
Morning, fellas. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. I've been running restaurants for about 20 years. And the tip credits, the wage increase, I understand that it's to help the employee, and I'm pretty pro-employee, but you can't blanket this over every single restaurant. Each restaurant is different. Each county is different. We've got servers, bartenders making $45 to $50 an hour right now. So when you add, minimum wage and hike that up 50 cents to $1, that goes straight out of the owner's pockets and onto your check. We have to compensate that wage increase directly into the cost of goods, much like, say, tariffs.
John, now I've talked to restaurant owners who said that their margins used to be 3-4% revenue at the end of the year, but that's now down to maybe a 1%. How are your restaurants doing that you're managing?
I'm very fortunate that our niche is going very well. We're in a good neighborhood, and so our margins are, they're about that 4 or 5%, and we're thankful for that. But there are people out there that are dreaming of that. There are people that are dreaming of just staying alive. But it's definitely taken a hit over the years. Back in the day, I'd say about 10, 15 years ago, you were looking at 10%, and 10% was smooth sailing. Nobody gets into the restaurant business with the idea of making money. That's insane. You try, and if you get lucky, you get lucky. But 50% of them close in 2 years.
John, what has been some of the bigger challenges you guys are facing? Is it kind of a collection of all of it? Costs going up, inflation going up, people aren't making enough money, so they're not going out to eat as much. Crime. I don't know the locations of your restaurants, but when you look at the challenges the industry's facing, is it a combination of all that?
It is. It's perception of value for your customer. That's number one. You want to make sure you're bringing a solid product without charging them too much. Any real restaurateur will tell you that we're not trying to grab bags off of you. We're trying to give you a quality product for a good value. Crime is not good. Certain areas, definitely some areas like 16th Street Mall, South Broadway, things like that. Those areas have definitely been hit by crime. Crime is definitely on the forefront of a lot of restaurateurs right now.
So, John, you don't have to share, but we love to highlight, especially local businesses on this show. What restaurants do you manage, and got any good special deals coming up? Good food for people to get?
I would love to, but I'm not the owner, so I would need permission to do that. But pay attention to your happy hours. That's where you get to try out new restaurants. And Restaurant Week coming up to support your restaurants on Restaurant Week.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that, John. And part of the problem is that if you're raising the wages inside of the restaurant and changing them without commensurate increase in wages around, it's a losing proposition, because if everybody in the neighborhood has more money, then the rising costs and prices aren't felt as much. But if the prices increase at the restaurant and everybody else isn't making more money, then it hurts and you lose business. Yeah, I feel it.
John, great call.
Thanks,
so
man.
Grateful
Thanks
for your
listening.
expertise. I'm hungry.
I'm too.
Especially for some Mexican food.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sounds good. All right. We'll continue. We got Mercedes Schlapp joining us in the next hour. You're not going to want to miss it. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
grab a cup of coffee, Denver, and let's dive into the issues that matter most to you right here, right now. In up after news and comment with Blake Olson. Mercedes Schlapp's going to be joining us. Yes, that Mercedes Schlapp. You know her. She was, or she is an American communication specialist, a political commentator. She served in 2 presidential administrations as director of specialty media under George W. Bush and as White House director of strategic communication in Trump's first administration. She's going to give us insight into CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference, and all the great activities coming up next week at CPAC in Washington, D.C. What are the themes? Who are we going to hear from? What are the issues that are going to be discussed? It's always a fun event. If you've never been to CPAC, I strongly recommend you check it out sometime, but we'll be learning more from Mercedes Schlapp. But first, news and comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
All right, Jeff and Billy, thank you very much. 3 degrees and hazy outside in Denver, expecting a high of 13 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story, travel woes could continue today as winter weather, a winter weather advisory is in place until around 11 o'clock this morning. For most of the Front Range, hundreds of flights delayed at DIA on Tuesday. According to FlightAware, more than 800 flights were delayed and around 15 were canceled. Inflation is rising more than anticipated. January's consumer price index increased by 0.5% for the month. It also pushed to the yearly inflation rate to 3%. Against projections of 2.9%. The House DOGE subcommittee will hold its first hearing this morning. The Delivering on Government Efficiency subcommittee is the congressional counterpart to Elon's Department of Government Efficiency. The hearing comes after DJT signed an executive order Tuesday giving the Musk-led DOGE more power to expose the fraud and corruption in the federal government.
You know, there's crazy things like we just cursory examination of Social Security, and we've got people in there that are 150 years old. Now, do you know anyone who's 150? I don't. Okay. They should be on the Guinness Book of World Records. They're missing out. So, you know, that's a case where, like, I think they're probably dead. It's my guess. Or they should be very famous, one of the two.
And as we said earlier, they may have been on the Warren commissions.
the mind conversation that Elon Musk was having in the White House Oval Office was crazy. Federal employee retirements are processed using paper by hand in an old limestone mine in Pennsylvania.
Yes.
700 plus mine workers operate 230 feet underground to process 10,000 applications per month, which are stored in manila envelopes and cardboard boxes.
Exactly.
The retirement process takes multiple months.
Oh my God.
Is it because they're afraid of of losing all the information that they somehow have to put it in a mine?
Evidently, it's temperature also. You probably read the same thing I did about the reservoir that keeps it cool, keeps it like 53 degrees.
Is it
the video?
No, I didn't know about that. I'm just reading the
God.
Department of Government Efficiency post there.
Well, they spent millions of dollars. I can't even remember the figure, but they spent millions of dollars to try to figure out how to transition from that. And then they decided not to do it. I think the transfer may have been it, but I mean, it's just technology. How will we do this? Get the best and brightest people to figure it out. But the video of that mine, Jeff, blows me away. I mean, if you look at it, it is crazy. It's like 6 or 7 what they call I don't know what they call challenge points, meaning gates, locked up gates and security points to get through. And the temperature is the most important thing. The ceilings and the rock inside there is fascinating. I had no idea it even existed.
You know this. What is the point? Everything else in our lives is done electronically. Is it because they're afraid of losing this information?
I
Why
think part
put
of
it
it is
all in paper?
part of it is just hacking, but the other part is government, and it's very difficult to
Yes.
get them to agree. I mean, if you were going through budgetary lines, and who, as far as Congress, is going to say, yes, we need to upgrade the retention system for the information we have about our retirees, that is going to be one of the first things that anybody is going to go, nope, don't need to spend money on that. And so that's my opinion.
It seems like they're spending a ton of money on it.
Well, no, but the idea of upgrading it would be a massive increase in spending, because you'd have to buy computer software, you'd have to then transfer those things in, you'd have to pay the people to transfer them, you'd have to put the firewall in, you have to decide where they are, you pay for the electricity. There's a whole bunch of stuff. I'm not saying necessarily better, but before we get so upset about, oh my gosh, why are they storing all the retirement records on paper? Remember that there is an entire group of people in this country that thinks that we should be voting by paper and counting it by hand, that we need to eschew technology. I know, but the idea that in that case, when we're counting our votes, then we need to go as old school as possible. If we could do it with cuneiform on rock tablets, that's the way we should go, and have people count them with an
marbles
abacus.
in a jar.
Exactly. So that's But
What's
in
wrong
this
with
case, but in this case, no, technology. Why are we doing technology? It's the weird juxtaposition of where and how we want to apply the technology. Yes, this seems like a complete waste of time and money and should have been upgraded. But we've seen that, and one of the things, I throw a lot of rocks at Elon and Doge, but one of the things that I haven't heard from him yet that I hope to would be just the base operating system. He's gone in there and changed code and stuff, but we know they're working on computers and working with systems that are in some cases very, very, very old. And I haven't heard him address the idea of upgrading the technology and the use. Some of these things in the IRS are still on floppies.
Old 60 Minutes where they went and looked at the missile systems we have in America and how they operate off of not little tiny discs, the big old floppy discs.
Yep. And that's the idea.
This was like up until 10, 15 years ago.
And so if we were talking about efficiency and changes, I was hoping that we would see some of that. The problem is, and the reason I don't think Doge is going to get there, that's an expenditure. He's there to cut. He's not there to spend more money on anything else. So the idea of him upgrading this retirement system, that would be a no-no, because that would be a spend, not a cut. So that's why that's one of the problems that I have with Doge, is that if we're going to upgrade as far as efficiency, then we also should be upgrading the hardware and the systems as well, not just trying to back-end engineer it by letting the kids get in there and change the code. I think that's a recipe for a mess. But, what do I know? I shouldn't be in charge of anything larger than a, elementary school talent show. So that's about it.
Well, you do great at that, by the way.
I get everybody doing jazz hands. Everybody.
$106 million, Jeff, to research this, and nothing happened. Iron Mountain is 330,000 square feet and 200 feet deep. Uses a 35-acre underground reservoir to create geothermal cooling, which is, it's amazing. So we're seeing, and a lot of things are coming to light here. Mark Fogel is back in the U.S. after being imprisoned on drug charges in Russia since 2021.
I'm a middle-class school teacher who's now in a dream world.
We're going to show you the Lincoln bedroom in a little while. It's a very special place. Appropriate for tonight. Very appropriate.
And thank you all. And I love our country. And I'm so happy to be back here. And I wish I could articulate it better.
You've done beautifully. And he's got a great mother. And when I saw the mother at a rally, she said, if you win, will you get my son out? And I promised. She's 95 years old. And I said, we'll get him out. And we got him out pretty quickly.
And that was in Butler, PA, right before DJT was shot by the intelligence patsy, in my opinion. Trump did not confirm or deny speaking with Russian President Putin, and said the terms of the deal were very fair and not like deals seen over the years. A confirmation vote for Tulsi Gabbard as the new Director of National Intelligence is expected to be held today. She ran as a Democrat in 2020 and then left the party in 2022 and then endorsed DJT.
President of the United States of America.
Yes, he is. Coca-Cola says it'll move to using more plastic bottles if new aluminum tariffs take effect next month. Interesting. King Soopers is seeking a temporary restraining order against striking employees, accusing them of harassing customers and creating unsafe conditions at some of their stores up and down the Front Range.
We had to make a decision to do the right thing for our customers and certainly for those associates that are not misbehaving.
Joe Kelly, division president of King Soopers, who claims there have been hundreds of incidents across the Metro's 77 stores within the first week of the strike. UFCW Local 7, the union representing the striking workers, called the filing another attempt to intimidate grocery store workers for exercising their right to fight for better working conditions.
The company is doing this to try to silence your voice, to try to weaken the strike lines, to try to encourage people to go back and accept a horrible concessionary offer.
It's going to be a cold one out there for them today. The Blazers at the Nuggets tonight in the NBA at 7 o'clock. It's 2 degrees in Parker, 1 in Arvada, 3 in Denver. Jeff and News Talk 710 KNUS.
Winter weather advisories are in effect, as well as a cold weather advisory for the overnight hours. Bitterly cold with periods of light snow and flurries. Any additional accumulations will be light, but watch out for slick conditions out there. Temperatures today will be in the lower teens. Tonight, we're going to go below zero, about 4 to 8 below zero, with wind chills to 20 below zero and a few flurries. Not as cold. 30s Thursday, warming to the 40s and low 50s as we get a Chinook on Friday. Meteorologist Jon Decker in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
House Director of Strategic Communications in the Trump administration. Also hosts CPAC, now uncanceled. And she's joining us to give us some insight on CPAC's big major gathering next week. Mercedes, it's an honor. Thank you so much for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yes, thank you. Good morning.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Jeff and Bill. This is great to be on. We're getting geared up. I got to tell you, we got a ton of snow here in the DC, Virginia, Maryland area. So we're not used to it. You guys are more used to the snow than we are. So this whole town shuts down when, we get a lot of snow, to the point that's why you have the senators, slowing down these votes for Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel and the gang. So, this is so typical DC when this happens, but we are not slowing down in CPAC planning. We are moving very quickly in terms of getting the best all-star conservative speakers at the event. It's going to be an all-star cast, and we're just so excited to be able to bring together, just the top conservatives from not only America, but literally from across the globe who come and descend on this DC victory, but it's also a moment.
I mean, I sit here and I watch, and I just saw Pamela Bondi on Fox up there, and I am so proud of the direction of this Trump administration. You all have to be as well. There's got to be a moment of excitement, energy, optimism about the future direction of this country. How is that going to play into CPAC next week?
Oh, it's going to be huge. I think that you've seen the slur, like just this slew of activity that's coming out of the White House and the Trump administration from not only the president, but the cabinet members. Just contrast that to the Joe Biden administration, where I don't think hardly anyone could name a cabinet member from the Biden administration because they kind of just would duck and hide everywhere, or, say crazy things like highways are racist, or, just the insanity that we've seen coming out of the Biden White House, where basically you saw a media cover up, and really the White House staff covering up for Joe Biden's mental decline. And you really kept saying, man, are we really this leaderless? Like, is this really where we are as a country, that if there were to be a major conflict, that we wouldn't feel secure, we wouldn't feel safe knowing that Joe Biden was at the helm? And contrast that to President Trump, who is engaged in every aspect of our government, whether it's with Elon Musk on the Doge, what they've been able to do in unraveling the corruption and mismanagement of taxpayer dollars. And then on top of that, the fact that you've got, Secretary Pete Hegseth, Marco Rubio, they're out working on the Ukraine situation, which is very complicated with the Russia and Ukraine war, and trying to see how can we get to a point that this war can end, a war that started under the watch of President Biden. So I have got to tell you, I love what I'm seeing coming out of this White House. I love what I'm seeing coming out of this cabinet. I got to tell you, I lived working for President Trump at the White House for 2 years, and that was during the time that we were facing a lot of the political persecution with the Russian hoax and the special counsels and all that craziness of targeting President Trump, targeting his MAGA supporters, people on his campaign team, by the FBI, and knowing that has ended, that is no longer going to happen, because I can tell you, it really, we got a lot done during that first term, but it was based on having our enemies trying to destroy the president and trying to destroy the administration in the process.
We're talking with Mercedes Schlapp. She's the wife of Matt Schlapp. She's the host of CPAC Now, America Uncanceled. She's going to have a very prominent role next week at CPAC. Now, Mercedes, I was the chairman of the Western Conservative Summit for 8 years.
Yes.
I often felt
Yes.
like I was CPAC's little brother, and we always looked up to you all. We were so proud of everything you did. We even hosted CPAC live at Colorado Christian University one year. And I know you guys are in the thick of it right now. You've got speakers you're confirming. You've got themes. Let's talk about what this year's theme is going to be. Who might be on stage? What are some of the issues you plan on covering?
Well, this is going to be, I got to tell you, okay, so Matt, my husband, has been chairman for 8 years, and I'm really proud of the work that he's done to basically, create this not only national American freedom movement, but literally this freedom movement across the globe. And what we have noticed is that now we have not only our grassroots activists who come from across the country, now we have delegations coming from other countries. And what they want is, they're like, can we please have MAGA in our country? How can we make our country strong? How do we fight the communists? How do we fight the globalists? How do we fight the fake news, the woke ideology? It's just an absolutely fascinating what I think is an expansion of CPAC into the globe. So we kick off with the CPAC International Summit on Wednesday. This is going to be led by several of the conservative leaders across the globe, including former Prime Minister Liz Truss. Nigel Farage will be joining us as well. We have Eduardo Bolsonaro from Brazil. We have presidents coming from Poland, Slovakia, Macedonia. I mean, you name it. It's kind of just surreal. We have representatives coming from Hungary, from Australia, Japan, etc. And so that's kicking off on Wednesday. But then we go straight Americana. Here we go. So this is going to be, having Vice President J.D. Vance with us. We're going to close it off with President Donald Trump, which is going to be amazing. And then there's a couple of really, I can't say, but just incredible speakers who will be announcing soon. But it is literally bringing the tech titans in from the Bitcoin world to the top tech individuals that we have. So this is, and of course, some of the cabinet members as well. Secretary Doug Burgum, Secretary Doug Collins. We've got White House official Tom Homan to talk about the border. We also have actors. Dean Cain is joining us. Dr. Phil is joining us, some of the media personalities. So what has happened is what used to be primarily a political conference is now a huge mix of business, of tech, talking of issues of artificial intelligence and Bitcoin, of MAHA, which is how are we going to make America healthy again? Of, the government officials, of course, will be part of this as well. We've got senators coming as well, and some congressmen. Really, it is just going to be talk about tackling every single critical issue that our country and our world is facing. Mike Waltz, the National Security Advisor, will be joining us as well. I mean, this is just off the top of my head of names that I'm just throwing out at you that are going to be speaking on stage, going to be on panels, going to be engaging with the grassroots activists. It's a lot of people who came out for the inauguration, couldn't really see much. It was freezing cold. The president was speaking indoors. This is an opportunity to be like, have a warm seat, get a good meal, and like see the president up and close, and as well as the vice president and so many of the government officials that have joined his team. And then on top of that, we've got, the cultural icons, the business icons that will be joining CPAC this time around. I'm telling you, it's going to be epic.
It is fantastic. Definitely something you must do. We're talking to Mercedes Schlapp. She's the host of CPAC, Now America Uncanceled, former White House senior advisor and wife to Matt Schlapp, the chairman of CPAC. So if you want to learn more, you go to cpac.org. You can buy tickets there. Will this be streamed online as well? Our folks from Colorado can't get out there. They can watch it?
Yes, please. Yes, you go to cpac.org. We're going to be doing a lot of work also with X on making sure that CPAC gets a lot of exposure. So you're going to be able to see it all. You can live stream it, cpac.org. And really, I got to tell you, it's really humbling to watch that you can be part of something so great. And we all do it. We all have a role. You all have a role in Denver to help, talk about the truth of what's happening in your community. I feel that, God's given Matt and I an opportunity to take that, the role of explaining the importance of preserving our freedoms and protecting our children and our family and faith and country, not only here in America, but across the globe. And it's truly an honor, and it's just an honor to be part of this incredible MAGA movement that President Trump has inspired us all to be part of.
Now, Mercedes, our goal always at the summit was to educate, inspire, activate. I think I see the exact same thing at CPAC. It's an opportunity to learn about these issues in depth, to be inspired to make a difference, and then activated to go out there and do something about it. Speaking of one of the big issues that it seems like Trump is going to face are these judges. So many lawsuits that the left is bringing up against President Trump. Do you think that's going to be a major conversation piece next week?
Oh, absolutely. It's so interesting because one of the phenomenons that Matt and I have discovered as we've traveled across the globe to all these different CPACs is the abuse of the judicial system. And this is something that we need to understand. Okay, George Soros has put a lot of money in to obviously put these crazy liberal judges and get them elected in many of these areas in the country. And he does this across the globe as well. And so you see this, for example, in places like Brazil, where you have the Supreme Court, basically one Supreme Court justice just trying to basically take down the Bolsonaro family, not letting Jair Bolsonaro even leave the country, or he will not be able to re-enter Brazil. So I think, for example, when you look at what's happening across the globe, and now you see what's happening in America, which is these activist judges who are going to do everything they can to be an obstacle and slow down what the president is trying to accomplish in the executive branch. Just think about this. This is like, he has the responsibility as being, in charge of the executive branch, trying to make changes. And we're going to run into so many of these lawsuits, so many of these, individuals who are saying, wait, I have been fired from my job and I'm a federal worker and I shouldn't be fired. It's like, dude, if you look at American corporations, like if you do a bad job, you're out, like you're done. Like these people don't know what it is to be fired. And so there is a real need for civil service reform in this country. But, the Democrats will stop us every way to do that. And there is going to be that constitutional fight between if Congress authorized it, or if the money was already allocated by Congress and appropriated by Congress, does the executive branch, where does the power lie, right? That is going to be the bigger constitutional question. And I think this is being sorted out in the courts. The problem is it's being sorted out in many of these liberal cities where you have these liberal judges who will do anything they can to stop the president.
Mercedes Schlapp joining us on the Jeff and Bill Show. The center of the conservative universe will be CPAC next week. You can attend live in person or watch it by visiting cpac.org. That's cpac.org. It's been an honor to have you today on the Jeff and Bill Show. Thank you so much, Mercedes.
Thank you.
All right, so next week, it'll be interesting to see all that covered. It's the center of the conservative universe. Is CPAC next week. So
so we'll see how it goes. I'm curious to again talks what comes out of it. Yeah, it's nice. It's a good
it you try to focus when you host a big conference on those big three things: education, inspiration, and activation. So that's great to hear.
Now, speaking about inspiration and activation, I have got a way that you can activate to get rid of your wounds.
Nice transition.
Thank you. This is a horrible transition. Hey, it's Bill Thorpe, and I want to talk to you about a brand new advertiser we have here, Wound Care Associates of Colorado. I'm excited they've joined the show because they are changing the game as far as wound care here in Colorado. I know that you may not be dealing with it, but you might have someone in your social circle. There may be a friend, a family member that has a slow healing cut, diabetic ulcers, pressure sores. That little tiny cut can turn into a very big deal. Torn skin and tissue is the perfect place for those dirt, germs, and bacteria to enter your body and come inside and have a party. Don't ignore the problem. You know that ignoring the problem doesn't fix the problem. And that's why Jennifer started Wound Care Associates of Colorado. Her uncle had diabetes, neuropathy, some other things. He developed a small cut on his toe. He had other things he was dealing with based on his health. He didn't think the small cut was a big deal. Turned into a really big deal. By the time he got medical attention, the infection had spread. They had to take the infection had taken root inside of his blood system, inside of his bones, and inside of his organs. He passed away 3 days later after the amputation that was supposed to help him fight the infection. It was a little cut that turned into a very big deal. That's why you don't wait. You need to jump on to coloradowound.com, and contact Wound Care Associates of Colorado today. This is why they're different. First, concierge-style service. They're going old school. The wound practitioner, the nurse practitioner that is wound care certified, comes to your home at your convenience on your timeline. You get all the care you would receive in any other medical office, but in the privacy and comfort of your own home. That's different. The other thing they do differently is they make sure that wound heals. There are a lot of wound care facilities out there. They just want to maintain the wound, not let it get any worse. That doesn't help anybody. I have a story in my own life where wound maintenance on my aunt led to her spending lots of time inside of the hospital with MRSA. She didn't go in for MRSA. She had a wound for something else, but she contacted MRSA because, again, that torn skin and tissue that the dirt, germs, and bacteria got access to. She ended up with some amputations because of it and some long stays in the hospital because they weren't fixing the wound. Do it right. Contact Wound Care Associates of Colorado. Do not wait. That little wound can become a very big deal before you know it. Now, Wound Care Associates of Colorado will assess your wound. They'll develop a personalized treatment plan for you and provide all the necessary care to heal your wound. They're going to make sure it heals, not just maintain it. These guys are difference makers. Don't mess around with anybody else. Contact coloradowound.com, Wound Care Associates of Colorado. Get the convenience, comfort, and privacy of treatment in your own home, a personalized treatment plan, and improved healing outcomes. You're going to reduce the risk of complications and promote faster healing with their specialized care. coloradowound.com. Check them out today. coloradowound.com. If you or a loved one is struggling with a chronic wound, for more information and to schedule your in-home visit today, that's coloradowound.com. They're changing the game for the better. They're the best doing it right now in the state. Don't mess around. coloradowound.com. And when you reach out to them, tell them you heard about them here on the Jeff and Bill Show because it helps us out as well. Thanks.
That's great to hear, Bill. We'll continue coming up. Donald Trump getting rid of those awful paper straws? Is he turning the corner and winning these battles that 80% of the country agrees with? Interesting article coming out of National Review. Trump's war on straws is about much more than straws. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Bill, I could never figure out for the life of me, with all of our technological advances, that we had straws that seemed to last 10,000 years, and then we had a straw that couldn't make it through a meal. And there was nothing in between.
I don't know.
It's always weird to me about these paper straws.
I never had that issue with the paper straws everybody else had. No, I never
they
really did.
Fell apart on me. Well, great National Review piece. Trump's war on paper straws is about much more than straws. The president and his party are laying claim to a political monopoly on convenience and consumer choice. Democrats and Republicans alike, who have marveled over Donald Trump's resurgent popularity, attribute that remarkable phenomenon to, among other conditions, the president's ability to zero in on 80-20 issues and align himself with the 80%. The president's approach to the political opportunities he has exploited is clever, but not necessarily revelatory. It is not as though Democrats did not know that, for example, letting men compete in women's sports or allowing millions of illegal immigrants to flood the country were broadly unpopular. They understood the risks they were courting. But the 20% to whom Democrats shackled themselves pounded their tables until they drowned out the other 80%. That dynamic explains the bewilderingly foolish Democratic crusade against single-use plastics, which the president has taken aim at in an executive order this week that focuses on one of the more unpopular manifestations of this campaign, the scourge of the paper straw. But the political issue here is bigger than straws. Rather, the president and his party are laying claim to convenience and consumer choice. Trump's February 10th executive order is straightforward. The irrational campaign against plastic straws has proven costly and inconvenient to consumers, and the dubious environmental benefits that this policy was designed to achieve have proven elusive. Therefore, the federal government will stop procuring or stocking federal facilities with paper straws, withdraw all rules and regulations that disfavor plastic straws, and put together a national strategy to end the use of paper straws before the end of March. But it's more than paper straws. It's those low-flow shower heads. It's the dishwashers that require you to rinse off and spend a lot more water just preparing the dishes to go into the dishwasher. It's those light bulbs. It's the restrictions on air conditioners. It's liberation against the war on things that work. I think that this article hits on it precisely. Bill, that Donald Trump is scoring points on convenience. Thoughts?
It's weird that he starts with the idea of the costly and ineffective. This from Captain Tariff, that makes things more costly. His major economic platform makes things cost more. And he's like, that is too costly. I also don't understand his fixation with showers. I don't understand. I mean, does he not have any water pressure at his place?
Have you taken showers in those low flow shower head things?
All I know is
awful.
I know, but you can buy something else. I mean, literally.
But no, you can't. You're restricted.
Yeah, you can.
You're restricted by these.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just
force you.
Maybe I've just got decent water pressure at my house. Maybe you guys got to work on that. I don't know. I mean, I'm not getting hydrotherapy. I'm not. It's not trying to peel the skin off my face. But I don't really have any issue with it. I haven't noticed that all of a sudden there is this horrible. And we replaced shower heads. Last, 5 years ago. There was one about 8 years ago, one about 9 years ago. So I don't know. Maybe I just missed it or something. I am upset about the LED light thing. I like the halogens, but that's a personal thing. I understand that I'm being completely and totally selfish on that one because I use halogens for my reptiles. And before, they would put a lizard on the box and charge me an extra 30%. So I could go to the hardware store and I could get less expensive halogens. So that's one but that's a personal thing. That's just me being selfish about it. And there are other ways to get around those as far as heating. Fine. If the issue is the straws, I didn't think the straws were that big of a deal either way. The paper straws just felt a little weird, but I never had it disintegrate on me or not. Okay. I understand the idea of taking these low wins, and I also believe they're public wins. He's grabbing low-hanging fruit. It's a lot like the people that we're going to try to arrest and deport with immigration. It's also somewhat of how Doge is going about things. They're starting with easy wins, things like the USAID, where not a lot of people care about that. I mean, it's like less than 5% of the federal budget, but now we're like, woohoo, look at all the wins. So that's why they're working their way out, and then they're coming in to the concentric circles, and now they're gonna have to work on healthcare and defense. So that and education, that'll be interesting as far as where they're finding there. But again, I come back to Donald Trump, Captain Tariff, saying, oh, we got to be worried about the cost. The cost is out of control. And then he announces plans that does what? Oh, yeah, raise costs. So a little disingenuous there, but it's smart. I agree with the article that he is taking the side of things that the 80% side with. And it was a mistake for some of the Democrat positions, especially, I have been, very, very open with the idea that I thought that it was dumb to allow people that were born male to compete in female sports, anything that was physical. Really open and honest around that one. And that was dumb for the Democrats to take on that issue. That would have been an easy one for them to just acquiesce and win on that one. It also would allow them to support the LGBTQ community in a better way, I think, rather than a universal. Say we got to pick and choose and where this exists at this point. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I like it as well in the sense that he's winning on this notion of convenience and consumer choice, because a lot of this stuff, I think they purposely perfectly describe it, is like dubious environmental benefits, right? Like the dishwashers, the low flow dishwashers that you end up having to spend more money washing and rinsing the dishes because it doesn't do a good enough job actually cleaning the dishes. The paper straws. I've always, like I said, laughed about the fact that the complaint was these straws stick around forever. They end up in the ocean. They're around for 10,000 years. And the response was a straw that couldn't make it through one dinner. Now, it fell apart on me every single time. I have to get two of them to get through dinner.
Yeah, I never had that experience, but I'm not saying it's invalid. It's not my experience, but I can see why paper sitting inside a liquid for a while would begin to disintegrate. So I'm not going to disagree with you on that one. The dishwasher thing, again, I don't know. I mean, I always rinsed off dishes before you put them in the dishwasher. The problem is there is an advantage that you want to rinse off those dishes before you put them in the dishwasher. One is it collects in the trap that's at the bottom of the dishwasher, all the food, and that actually reduces your flow.
It's not a garbage disposal.
Yeah, and that can create problems. It can get into the water line in there. They can create gunk inside, so you don't want that. The other problem is this: if you're not rinsing your dishes, you know how we clean them? You increase the acerbic nature of the soap that is in there. So what happens is the soap ends up eating through your china and your silverware and other things. If you wonder why, you were a kid and the china would stick around for a while, and all of a sudden now, after a couple of years, you're seeing small hairline cracks in some of, and I'm not talking expensive stuff. I'm talking about the stuff you'll buy at Kohl's or Target, and you're all of a sudden seeing slight cracks in those. It's because of the caustic nature of the soap that has to be in there now in order to get the stuff off. So that's what we're doing. We're trading one for the other. And so you're going to have to replace your dishes more often because of the soap that we are now using inside of those machines. So again, trade-offs, just so people understand this is why it's happening.
Rob in Tennessee, low flow shower heads suck. It's like a heavy stream, or I like a heavy stream of hot water. So when I buy a shower head, I spend a bit more modifying it so it passes more water. I can usually remove restrictors or bore out a couple orifices.
Yeah, you can.
But the newer heads are getting more difficult to work around, so I tend to keep my old shower heads I've already modified.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just I just have different standards as far as what I'm looking for in there, and that's fine. People can have different choices. I don't see necessarily that difference. I don't see this big thing that somehow I'm not able to get my body clean based on how the shower head is functioning. I don't. Maybe Donald Trump has more filth on him than I do, and that could be possible. I'm just saying it may not work where he is.
I think
maybe it's going through a gold shower head. Maybe it doesn't run as quickly. I don't know. Again, I don't know what the issue is.
I think all of this is a great move to just free up the consumer And to your point and to the article's point, it's an 80-20 type of issue that most people agree with. Look, do you know a high school student who has a passion for engaging in cultural and political issues? The knowledge and skills needed to impact the world through civic engagement is an ever-increasing need in today's society. Colorado Christian University is at the forefront of meeting this crucial need, equipping the next generation of competent, convictional Christian leadership in American politics. CCU's degree program in politics with an emphasis in public policy prepares students for the complex challenges of modern politics from an unapologetically Christian and foundationally conservative worldview. In this distinct program, students learn how to impact public policy, advance Christian conservative ideas. Colorado Christian University also houses the Centennial Institute, a think tank committed to mobilizing ideas on faith, family, and freedom to strengthen America's future. CCU's mission to produce graduates who impact the world with grace and truth applies in no greater measure than to our politics and public policy program. So apply today at ccu.edu/apply. That's ccu.edu/apply. We'll continue with the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
At this hour, I'm Christina Awayo in Dallas, and here are your top stories. President Donald Trump signed an executive order directing federal agencies to work with DOGE to shrink the size of the federal government. Elon Musk in the Oval Office with the president when he signed the executive order, where both talked about the excessive fraud, waste, and overspending in the federal government.
Some of the things that we found, which are shocking, billions and billions of dollars in waste, fraud, and abuse. And I think it's very important. And that's one of the reasons I got elected. I said, we're going to do that. Nobody had any idea it was that bad, that sick, and that corrupt. And it seems hard to believe that judges want to try and stop us from looking for corruption, especially when we found hundreds of millions of dollars worth, much more than that, in just a short period of time. And we want to weed out the corruption.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has threatened to withdraw from the ceasefire in Gaza and directed troops to get ready if the terror group of Hamas does not release more hostages on Saturday. Hamas saying that it planned to delay the release of 3 more hostages after accusing Israel of failing to meet the terms of the ceasefire. President Donald Trump has backed Israel's position, going a step further, saying that if all hostages are not released on Saturday, all hell will break loose. That's what you need to know at this hour. In Dallas, Christina Awayo, Salem News Channel.
Lots of text messages coming in on this. Iggy saying, I let my dog lick the dishes before I put them in the dishwasher.
Been there, done that. I do that every once in a while.
That's the thing. We lost our house dog about a year ago, River.
Oh, so sorry.
And she was so sweet. We were all there when she passed, but she was our little house dog. She would go around and clean up the crumbs and all that stuff. Now it's just barn dogs.
Our dog goes like from seat to seat because the dog recognizes, who the easy marks are. So
you're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is News Talk 710 KNUS.
the Jeff and Bill Show. It is 9 a.m. in the Mile High City on this very chilly Wednesday, February 12th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Congratulations. You just woke up in the greatest country in history, and Donald Trump's your president. Let's kick it off. We got a whole hour planned for you of engaging discussions, critical analysis, but most importantly, your phone calls and texts, because this is where Denver's voice is heard loud and clear. So grab a cup of coffee, Denver. Let's dive into the issues that matter most to you right here, right now. Want to talk Musk-Trump Oval Office. I thought it was fantastic. I love the fact that these guys are in control of the government right now, and they are bringing all of their business, entrepreneurial, and even CEO expertise to our government, demanding changes, moving fast, breaking some things. Yes, but how do you feel about the websites being held up, all the different lawsuits that are coming from the left? That's how they plan to fight. Here's how I see it. Democrats don't have an answer to Donald Trump, so they're desperately running to the courts in an effort to stop his reform. It's clear to me that this is going to be a losing strategy in a long run, because people want these types of changes, and they don't like the fact that the government's stepping in to try to slow them down. It's part of the deep state. It's part of the progressive left, and I think it's going to backfire on them. But I want to hear from you. Join the conversation, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. Also yesterday, Bill, because the bigwigs don't listen to the show in Washington, D.C., and because I used to be part of the neocon effort, I'm still part of these like groups that are like, yeah, USAID. So they invited me onto a call. I decided to listen to yesterday.
Oh, nice.
And I heard their reasoning and their arguments, and not that compelling. But I'll get into that and more. We got a whole lot to cover this hour. But first, news with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
All right, thanks a lot, Jeff and Billy. 3 degrees and hazy in Denver, expecting a high of 13 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story, travel woes could continue today as a winter weather advisory is in place until around 11 o'clock this morning for most of the Front Range. Hundreds of flights delayed at DIA on Tuesday. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth says that Ukraine joining NATO is not realistic. Hegseth went on to say that the responsibility for securing a post-war Ukraine must fall on European troops, not the U.S. He reiterated that no U.S. troops will be sent to Ukraine.
Any security guarantee must be backed by capable European and non-European troops. If these troops are deployed as peacekeepers to Ukraine at any point, they should be deployed as part of a non-NATO mission.
Hegseth is on his first trip abroad since being confirmed as defense secretary. He visited with U.S. troops in Germany on Tuesday. The congressional counterpart to Elon's Department of Government Efficiency is holding its first hearing. The House's DOGE subcommittee hearing is underway right now, and the theme is the war on waste, stamping out improper payments and fraud. 3 witnesses are expected to testify today. Mercedes Schlapp from CPAC. It's next week on with Jeff and Billy last hour.
We are moving very quickly in terms of getting the best all-star conservative speakers at the event. It's going to be an all-star cast, and we're just so excited to be able to bring together, just the top conservatives from not only America, but literally from across the globe who come and descend on this DC area so that we can, there's a moment of celebration and a moment of victory, but it's also a moment of rolling up our sleeves and making sure that we're getting the job done.
One day I want to get there. One day. Pittsburgh area teacher Mark Fogel is back on U.S. soil after being imprisoned in Russia since 2021.
I feel like the luckiest man on earth right now. And I want you to know that I am not a hero in this at all. And President Trump is a hero.
Fogel had been arrested on charges of bringing medical marijuana into Russia and was classified as wrongfully detained. Trump said another American prisoner will be released today. King Soopers is seeking a temporary restraining order against striking employees, accusing them of harassing customers and creating unsafe conditions at some of their stores.
We had to make a decision to do the right thing for our customers and certainly for those associates that are not misbehaving.
Joe Kelly, division president of King Soopers, who claims there have been hundreds of incidents across the Metro's 77 stores within the first week of the strike. UFCW Local 7, the union representing the striking workers, called the filing another attempt to intimidate grocery store workers for exercising their right to fight for better working conditions.
The company is doing this to try to silence your voice, to try to weaken the strike lines, to try to encourage people to go back and accept a horrible concessionary offer.
Around 1 million people expected at the Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl parade, victory parade on Friday. We'll see if the mayor is able to spell Eagles correctly. There's no word if Nevada sportsbooks will have their own victory parade after taking in a state record $22.1 million following the result of the Super Bowl. In the NBA, the Blazers at the Nuggets tonight, tip-off 7 o'clock. It's 4 in Centennial, 3 in Lakewood, and 5 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue.
Never let anyone take your joy from you. I call myself a joyful warrior.
And so are Jeff and Billy. Blake Olson, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Winter weather advisories are in effect, as well as a cold weather advisory for the overnight hours. Bitterly cold with periods of light snow and flurries. Any additional accumulations will be light, but watch out for slick conditions out there. Temperatures today will be in the lower teens. Tonight, we're going to go below zero, about 4 to 8 below zero, with wind chills to 20 below zero and a few flurries. Not as cold. 30s Thursday, warming to the 40s and low 50s as we get a Chinook on Friday. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Look, are you ready to transform your kitchen or bathroom into a stunning masterpiece? Look no further than the Art of Granite, your premier destination for exquisite granite, marble, and quartz countertops. For over 15 years, Mitch Floria, owner of the Art of Granite, has been crafting and installing custom countertops, fireplaces, showers, and more. Their team of experts will guide you through the selection process, ensuring you find the perfect stone to match your style and budget. Visit their showroom in Golden or browse their online inventory at theartofgranite.com. Discover the endless possibilities for your home renovation project. Mention KNUS and get a free bathroom countertop with new kitchen countertops, or choose a free kitchen or bathroom sink with any countertop package. Man, that's a great deal. Don't wait. Transform your home into the oasis you deserve. Schedule your free consultation with Mitch today. Go to theartofgranite.com. That's theartofgranite.com. Mention KNUS for those exclusive savings and transform your kitchen or bathroom dreams into reality with theartofgranite.com. So yesterday, 30 minutes, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Elon Musk's son. Man, there's so much to talk about here. One, I love the visual. I love the young kid. It reminded me of JFK Jr. around the Resolute desk. I thought it was sweet and endearing to see Elon Musk involve his son in that. The conversation was fantastic. Elon Musk defending his cost-cutting plans as a common sense campaign to rein in out-of-control government spending amid opposition from the Democrats and legal challenges that have stalled some of these efforts. But here's what I saw, Bill, and I love your perspective. I don't know if you watched the 30 minutes or so conversation, but I saw two industry titans, guys that have built great things, now in charge of the federal government and bringing all that expertise, bringing all that insight, all of the business entrepreneurial CEO mindset that we're going to cut little bits here and there if we need to. Because when you're a CEO, even, $100 million might be a drop in the bucket to the federal government, but to a business owner, any waste out there drives you crazy. And so you got to address it. It feels like a golden era in America. And I was thrilled to see that happen yesterday. Did you get a chance to watch any of it?
I watched a little bit of it, but I can only stomach so much because it was just, there was a celebration of a king. That's what it was. It wasn't the idea of ushering in a golden age of America. It was the idea of we believe that we should be sovereigns, that we should be the rulers, that everybody else needs to acquiesce what we want and get out of the way. And the stuff that Elon said was silly. He called the bureaucracy unconstitutional. That is on its face stupid. I mean, just on its face, the bureaucracy is unconstitutional. Think about that just for 30 seconds. That is dumb.
Well,
phenomenally
he was
dumb.
critiquing the fact that the people vote, and you, instead of having a democracy where you have new leadership that can make changes, you have a bureaucracy that throws wrenches into it every step of the way. So his quote was, "We don't have a democracy, we have a bureaucracy."
But if you don't have those people in those rank and file, how does anything get done? And he's just mad they weren't doing what he wanted. That's it. He just wants to be king. Same thing with Trump. It wasn't the issue that these people were maybe, following the rules, just like USAIDs funded by Congress. Technically, Doge, who's not elected, doesn't hold a single government position, didn't get it. Elon Musk didn't get a single vote. Wouldn't that make him an unelected bureaucrat? But he didn't get a single vote, yet he is going through and cutting programs that have been authorized by Congress. That is not how the program works. And you can't run the government like you are a CEO. It's not set up that way. It just doesn't exist that way. So the idea that you're going ahead and going to run it like a business doesn't necessarily work. But good luck with that. But again, he stood there. He talked about the idea that there was a national mandate, the will of the people. Does anybody tell him that Donald Trump got less than 50% of the votes that were cast in the election? And did anybody also tell him that there were Democrats that were elected? And does anybody tell him what the split is in both the House and the Senate? Somehow he decided all those other people that he disagrees with, their votes don't count. They don't count. It doesn't matter. It's just that we are going to adopt this. Again, make me king. And the one thing that I did notice, he's talking about saving the country billions and billions of dollars. Why hasn't he cut his subsidies yet? There are billions. He could save billions of dollars for the government immediately. What could be easier than forfeiting all of his subsidies? We haven't heard a thing about that, have we? That's weird. That would be the easiest thing for him to cut. It'd be so easy. That's weird. I'm going to see what's on the phone.
We've got lots of phone calls coming in. Where do you fall along this? Do you enjoy watching Donald Trump and Elon Musk take it to the federal government the way that I do? These titans of business and industry with their CEO entrepreneurial experience, cutting here and there. And maybe Elon Musk should cut out some of those subsidies. I wouldn't mind that. I think that would be great as well. And he could step up to do that. Would love to hear from you. 303-696-1971. 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law Text line at 720-819-5115. Let's go to Nick Denver. Good morning, Nick. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Morning.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. All this screaming and yelling that what Musk and Trump are doing are unconstitutional, he's a dictator and all that, I think that's all a little bit premature. The fact remains, You can't argue with basic mathematics. We are almost $37 trillion in the hole. I know I sound like a broken record, but you can't go on like this. If you keep going down this road, you're going to have a financial collapse, which will make what's going on now nothing compared to what could happen. And so they are trying to get a handle on this out of control federal budget before it buries us. I don't see what the problem is.
Are they doing that, Nick? Really?
Well, they haven't. How long have they been at it? 10 days?
No, but I'm curious. Do you think they really are? And the reason I'm asking this is, what would you do with Donald Trump's tax cuts that are set to expire? Would you continue them, or would you let them expire?
Yes,
okay.
I would continue
now,
them.
Understanding that continuing them is, according to Congressional Budget Office and other economists, is going to add a minimum of $5 trillion to our deficit.
So that's where you have to cut the waste in the federal government.
Hang on, Nick. If we let the tax cuts expire, that $5 trillion in the increased deficit doesn't exist. That is the simplest, easiest, most efficient way to not increase the deficit. That's it. But that's not what we're talking about.
You're saying that the government is more efficient and more prudent in spending our money than we are. That's what you're saying.
No, Nick, no, I'm not. What I asked you about was, are we really sure that what Donald Trump and Elon Musk are trying to do is really lower the spending and lower the deficit? Because, and the reason I'm putting that on the table is because one of the easiest ways that they could lower the deficit immediately would be to not continue Donald Trump's tax cuts. That would increase revenues, and it would also prevent the deficit from rising.
Two words, Laffer curve.
But the deficit will increase it by...
money into the government via revenue from a strong economy, not taxing businesses higher.
What happened to that money last time when Donald Trump implemented his tax cuts? Where did the money go?
The businesses.
Yeah,
and to people.
What did the
jobs,
businesses do?
and then they pay taxes.
No, it didn't go to jobs. No, it didn't. No, over 80% of it went to stock buybacks and bonuses. They didn't hire people with it. They didn't make capital improvements. They did stock buybacks and bonuses, and they goosed their stock prices.
So you believe it's better to send it to the government?
No, I'm saying that created a deficit. No, I'm saying that's the deficit. You just brought up Laffer.
Hang on a sec. COVID.
You just brought up Laffer.
It did. It totally came from COVID.
No, it didn't. Not all of it. And the Trump tax cuts are directly responsible for at least $5 to $9 trillion. That's directly responsible for it. And it will increase again. We're not going to have COVID again. It will increase the deficit. If we are really concerned about the deficit, you let those tax cuts expire. But we're not. Immediately, Jeff brings up Laffer curve, which again, this increases the deficit. If we're worried about that, you let the tax cuts expire, but we're not going to. Here in a couple of months, we're going to have a huge fight over that. And wait until about 2 weeks, we're going to have 3 weeks. We're going to have a huge fight over whether or not we increase the debt limit. Now, you wouldn't do that if you're really worried about the deficit and decreasing spending. But it's going to be a fight about increasing the debt ceiling, and it's going to be a fight over keeping Donald Trump's tax cuts, both of which will increase the deficit. So I push back and I say, I don't agree with you, Nick, and I don't agree with Jeff that the goal of this is actually to constrain spending. That's actually to lower the deficit. There's something else at play here.
What is it then? What do you think is at play?
I think that Elon Musk wants power. I think Donald Trump does as well. I think there's a push towards authoritarianism. And I also think that there is this idea that Elon Musk goes in really hard and breaks things and then tries to figure out what's going on the back end. Remember, the example we have of him doing this most recently, the one that is most germane, is Twitter. He went in and fired around 80% of the employees, and then he tanked 80% of the revenue. And then he's been shedding users over and over again. Just about a month ago, Elon Musk sent an email to the people that work at Twitter saying they're on the verge of bankruptcy. How'd that work out? So again, I'm not sold that this is the right thing. And we talk about USAID. Well, Elon Musk was just fine taking nearly $500,000 from USAID for Starlink. He took that money from them. They weren't a den of vipers then. He cashed the check and smiled all the way to the bank.
And Starlink did well.
And he did.
It helped people.
But
it did a hell of a lot better than the rural broadband that Kamala Harris wanted to do.
Is it a nest of vipers full of fraud? or did he get a nearly $500,000 from it? And then when they started investigating what he did with the money and the access to Starlink, now he was against them, and then he closed them down. That's weird. That's strange.
I think it boils down to the fact that you seem to have an inordinate faith in government, and I don't, because I've seen it operate firsthand. I think if you leave the money in the private hands, they'll make mistakes, but nothing as bad as what the government does. You need to keep those you need to couple the tax cuts with cuts in government spending.
I can see where you're going with that. See, I don't have this. I disagree with you that I have this faith in government. I don't necessarily have the faith in government.
I have no faith in government.
I understand. Well, yeah, you do some, because you're assuming that the water is going to come into the house today, and so is the electricity. And if you call 911, the cops are going to show up. Also, if we're attacked, you assume the Defense Department's going to do something about it. So you do have some faith inside of government. You're not out there declaring yourself a sovereign citizen. So, Nick, at some level, you do have faith. And I would guess also you voted in the last election, which also would demonstrate.
Yes, I did.
So that would demonstrate a faith in government, a faith in the system that works. So I understand not trusting it, and I'm there with you. I don't trust it. And I was talking with one of the texters about the idea of looking at salaries. And Elon Musk says, these people's salaries that we're seeing what the government's paying them doesn't add up to how they're living. Well, I don't know if there are any extra income streams. I don't know if it's fraud or not. And Elon Musk, to his credit, has identified what I would say is, we can classify it as waste. At some points, it's different priorities. Some people have some priorities, some people have others. And we can talk about that being waste. But what I haven't seen him demonstrate at the core, Nick, is fraud. That's what I'm waiting for.
But he's only been at it for 2 weeks, for Christ's sake. He's been at it for 2 weeks.
I know, sir, but he's gone through this big thing about, look how much money I'm saving. Look how much money I'm saving. But the thing he hasn't come out with yet is the fraud. He said he was chasing the fraud that is rampant in the government. And yet, so far, we haven't seen any.
Why wouldn't you honor the waste that he's putting out?
I already covered that. That and said that I'm fine with that, and I see it. But some of that is also different priorities. He has different priorities based on he doesn't like USAID, and there are a vast number of reasons for that. But understand that part of us not being involved in USAID will end up with things like more people getting HIV, more people dying. Right now, we're fighting a malaria outbreak in Uganda, but that work isn't going to go forward. So people are going to get sick, and people are going to die because of that.
But why can't Uganda?
No, yes, we know. No,
why can't Uganda?
They don't have the money, and they need our help. So why wouldn't we help them? We have the money, we have the ability, we have the medicine. Why wouldn't you?
Well, if we really care about it, you could have charities do it.
Why wouldn't you?
I don't understand why, because we're $36 trillion in debt, to Nick's point.
I know, but if I'm looking at it, the idea that Elon Musk needs billions of dollars in subsidies, or I'm going to go help save people in Uganda, I'm choosing Uganda. I'm sorry. It's not a difficult decision for me. It's not a difficult decision at that when the rubber meets the road. It's not a difficult decision for me.
If we have a financial collapse, there isn't going to be any money for anything.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nick. And Bill, I want to ask you about this. Bloomberg reports that the earnings for X under Elon Musk are roughly flat with the period before Elon acquired the app.
I would love to see that information, because that's not true. One, it's not a publicly traded company.
I'm looking at it right now.
I understand, but his advertising is tanking. That's why he's suing the advertisers. His advertising revenue is down 80%.
But his earnings are roughly flat.
Let me give you a quick example, because I was a teacher for a while and I had to get out. And very quick, there are other people on the phone. In 1979, they formed the Department of Education with one ostensible. Hello?
Yeah, we got you.
No, I don't know. There's another call, but anyway. In the 40 or 50 billion dollars or whatever we have spent on the Department of Education since 1979, public education has gone into the toilet.
Mm-hmm.
So where did all that money go? Well, the answer to that is it got wasted. That's one example. The Department of Education. They have done nothing to improve education. Very few. There have been some examples where they've done good, but generally speaking, it's been a disaster.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, Nick. Sure appreciate the call. Thanks so much. 303-696-1971. 303-696-1971. Lots of text messages coming in. Reading that through. Bill, we got another caller. Is Ron ready?
Yeah,
Let's go to Ron in Denver. Good morning, Ron. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Morning.
Good morning. Billy, you know I love you. and I disagree with you, but I can't argue with you. I'm not at that speed.
That's okay. We can walk through it. No problem.
I told you, I gave you a quote right after Trump was elected the first time, and it was a PBS group.
Yeah.
And they're always on TV. And the one gal, I wrote it down, I put it in my phone. She said, what do these people want that they don't already have? And underlying in that is an attitude that's pervasive in Washington, D.C. We give you what you need. We take care of you. And I thought, you've never owned a business. You've never run an apartment building for 50 years. You don't know how hard it is to make money and take care of people who depend on you and then ask them to give you more money. So they're always asking for more money out of DC, but they never give anything back in return.
You don't think you've gotten anything, Ron?
I've earned it all. I've paid taxes. I've put my money into 401ks. I'm so glad that it's there. But what's happened to it is they think what's happened to it is the fraud that's going on. I drove my daughter.
Let me do this,
worked.
Ron. Let me stop you there just for a sec. When you're talking about not getting anything from the government, I'm pretty sure that if you walk over to the tap this morning and turn the water on, the water's there.
I pay for it.
When hang on a sec, but when you turn on the lights are there. I'm
I
not
paid
saying
for it.
no. Wait, Ron. I'm not saying you get something for free. What I'm talking about is providing something, and that's why again you have fees that you pay for, and you also have taxes. You have schools that are in your area. You have roads. You have bridges. You have things like national defense. There are a whole bunch of things that you derive benefit from the government that you don't necessarily go out and pay for directly. And you wouldn't be able to afford a private security firm to patrol your neighborhood. That would be difficult. But yet you pay taxes in order to have a police department that is there. So those are some of the things that you derive as benefits from the government. They're also, but I don't defer to them always making the right decision, but they are necessary. But also you can't run the government like a business, because the government doesn't have customers. The government is us. And as soon as we start looking at the government as a business, it's no longer really a government. It becomes a business. And then we become customers. We aren't involved in the choice of our leadership anymore. We aren't involved in what our needs are anymore. We are dealt with as customers. The entire relationship changes. I'm not arguing that our government is either smart nor efficient at times, but it is necessary and it operates differently. And so I'm going to judge it differently.
I've always said this. I don't remember voting for illegals to come into the country, starting from the first time I voted. I don't remember voting for, I didn't know what U.S. aid was. I don't remember voting for that, for somebody to send $40-some thousand to Norway. I don't remember.
But what was the money for
that.
Norway, Ron? That's the issue is, what is the money doing and where is it going and why? Because for me, I'm okay.
Correct.
I'm
And so what
I'm
they're
okay
doing
sending
is
the money to the kids to people in Uganda who are dealing with a malaria outbreak. I'm okay with that. And understand the idea of I didn't vote for, but there are going to be a lot of people that are liberals that are going to say, I didn't vote for the new aircraft carrier. I didn't vote to have a new plane. I voted for this. And there are going to be a lot of people that live here, right here in Colorado, that are going to say, I didn't vote to have the Colorado legislature take away my Second Amendment rights, and just recently tried to outlaw all guns that have a detachable magazine. I didn't vote for that, but yet we have these issues all the time.
Well, but, I mean, in speaking in general, I've been in Europe. I've been in Germany. I know what they have lost. I know what I have here, and I appreciate it. What I don't appreciate is the gal that runs U.S. aid, and there's a picture of her in Africa or someplace hopping out of a Range Rover. That's the kind of, and I'm glad they're showing that. And I think that's what's upsetting people is that.
But who owns the, Ron, I understand that, but who owns the Range Rover? Because I would be hard pressed.
We do.
Well, I don't know. I'd be hard pressed to think that
we are the ones that
I don't know.
Those things
Again,
go there.
I don't know. I mean, I know that she didn't.
Know.
I know that she didn't probably bring that there. Could it be something that is purchased from USA ID and used that way to transport around? Yes, it could. And if you're just mad about the branding and the badge, personally, depending on the model, I may not choose a Range Rover because unless you get into certain models, Range Rovers are vastly inefficient and they're not very dependable. There are some models out there that are just complete crap.
Ron, I appreciate the call. We'll continue this conversation because I do want to get into USAID, the amount of money that we're spending, where it's going, and are Americans just tired of trying to be the world's police force while being $36 trillion in debt? You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
At this hour, I'm Christina Aguayo in Dallas, and here are your top stories. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem is saying that Manuel Perez Jr. will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law after the CBP officer was arrested for allegedly smuggling illegal migrants and drugs into the country. Perez was arrested in El Paso, Texas, on criminal charges related to his alleged involvement in the smuggling crimes for financial gain between December 2023 and February of 2025. According to court documents, the 32-year-old allowed vehicles driven by illegal migrants to pass through ports of entry. Perez is being charged with 1 count of conspiracy to bring aliens into the U.S. for financial gain, 3 counts of bringing aliens to the United States for financial gain, and 1 count of conspiracy to possess a controlled substance with intent to distribute. He faces 10 years to life behind bars. The state's top court has ruled Karen Reed can be retried on all 3 charges in the death of her Boston police officer boyfriend. Reed is accused of ramming into John O'Keefe with her SUV and leaving him to die in a snowstorm in January of 2022. Reed's attorneys, however, argue she was framed to protect other law enforcement officers involved in O'Keefe's death. A judge declared a mistrial in June after finding jurors couldn't reach an agreement. The Massachusetts ruling means prosecutors can try her again on charges of second-degree murder and manslaughter. In Dallas, Christina Aguayo, Salem News Channel.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show, talking all things Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Doge, the cuts that are taking place. And then yesterday I was on a call with folks that are active in recruiting support for foreign intervention, investments, serving people. And I listened to their arguments yesterday, and I just don't see it anymore. I think that Americans have changed, especially after all the investments that has been put into the Middle East and outside of Israel. There's really not a lot there to be excited about. Iraq, Afghanistan, bloodshed, billions of dollars spent there, and their cultures just went right back to kind of radical Islamists right after we left. And so I think people are exhausted. So I listened yesterday, and it was, these islands need our help. These people need our help, all that stuff. And I'm sitting there going, it's not 1960 anymore. It's 2025. We know how to address these issues. And if there's countries that are struggling, why, after so much money has been spent, are they continuing to struggle? Why aren't they addressing these core issues that they're facing? And, the USAID budget over time has grown 106.4% from 1980 to 2024. In 2024, USAID spent $21.7 billion. And I get the sense that they're like, well, this is a small percentage of the federal budget. This is 0.3% of the federal budget. But what I saw from Elon Musk and Donald Trump were what business people do. Business people, when they look at their companies and they see a little area of waste or of change that needs to be done, they don't go, well, it's just a small percentage. They address it immediately. They go, that absolutely has to be cut, because any amount of waste, even if it's a 0.01%, is money going in a bad direction, and they want to address it. That's why I was thrilled to see the conversation yesterday. I appreciate Donald Trump and Elon Musk's leadership, because we sure as hell weren't getting it under the Joe Biden mindset. And what you get from the progressive DC swamp is everything is so important. If we don't do this, if we're not the ones to do it, then these people are going to die, or there's going to be terrible consequences, or China is going to step in. That was one of the arguments made yesterday. China is going to be controlling with all these roads and bridges initiatives all over the place. And I kind of wanted to be kind of sad there and go, well, if China wants to spend all the money trying to take care of all the world, go for it. And I don't see this belief that they're all of a sudden going to become communist countries. If China, we didn't see it in Afghanistan when we spent $1 billion there and our own bloodshed. The minute we left, they just went right back to their culture. So I just don't believe the kind of domino theory. I don't believe that if we don't do it, that somehow these other countries aren't going to figure it out themselves. And then you add that on $36 trillion in debt. I just think people are tired of being the world's police and the world's piggy bank for all their problems. What do you think? Join the conversation. 303-696-1971. Do you really believe that if the United States does not provide billions of dollars of aid to these other countries, that China is somehow going to control these other countries? Do you really believe it? Give me a call, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're talking USAID, Trump, Doge, Elon Musk. What do you think? Let's go to Brian Arvada. Good morning, Brian.
Hey, morning.
Hey, guys. Yeah, this is just, everybody's going to figure out once they get into the other parts that this is just nothing but a slush fund. And this is why they don't want to cure the problem. You know the old saying, give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. Teach him how to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. They have no interest in teaching these guys anything because, for one, the administrative state takes about 70% just to run the administrative state. Now, you look at Mike Lindell. He does 5 cents per dollar, and he can give all these homeless vets homes and stuff. These guys take 70%, and they're completely ineffective. So they have no interest at all in solving this problem, because then they can give all their buddies jobs. It's pretty easy. It's just a money laundering operation. You know, they put their little buddy off in some rainforest and say, okay, you're an executive to protecting a bug or something, and here's $150,000 a year. That's why they're all out screaming, making fools of themselves every day. I mean, have you seen their latest song? It's absolutely ridiculous. People have caught on. The gig's up. It's over.
Brian, I agree with you. I think a lot of this is going to come out. Bill?
I'm not certain because I understand the idea of administrative bloat, but what we're not seeing from Elon and Doge is anything talking about administrative bloat. He didn't, when he canceled USAID, he didn't do anything about administrative costs. So I can't say that you're right nor you're wrong.
I thought they're letting a lot of people go. I thought they're cutting it.
Well,
way
let
down.
me ask Billy something.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Billy, they said these condoms, okay, they're protecting AIDS, okay? Now they get the condoms for about 3.5 to 4 cents a piece. They spent some $50 million. Now let's do the numbers, Billy. How many condoms do these people need? What are they putting on 5 and 6 at a time? I'm telling you, Billy, it's nothing but a slush fund. It's a scam. It's a money laundering.
Where did those?
Why do you think?
Where did the condoms go, Brian?
Well, there's a question about that on the meeting last night, because I can't remember what he said, but they went to a different place.
They're going to Africa.
Yeah, but they didn't. But remember what the original thing was when he heard about
but
it?
he corrected.
Originally,
He said
originally it was about Gaza, and then it went somewhere else, and now finally Africa. And again, Africa is a very, 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 very large continent with a lot of people. And so I understand the idea of, is this the most efficient way to spend our money? And I've been pushing about inefficient spending for years. I've been very open with it on the station, on the show, especially with things like acquisitions in the Defense Department. If you're looking at someone that is overpaying for stuff, chances are you're going to find most of it housed inside the Defense Department. And hopefully that's where Elon's going next, and we'll see what happens there as far as what he finds waste fraud.
Yeah.
But he's not going to find anything having to do with Starlink, I'm certain. So the idea, though, is when they first came out, understand the information that we're getting. When it first came out, it was about condoms for Gaza, which was wrong. And then their second explanation was wrong. And finally got to the real explanation. That should cause some pause in your decision-making and Jeff's decision-making and mine as to whether or not at the core, some of these people involved know exactly what they're doing, because they misidentified this information and this money not once but twice and did it publicly, and we're proud about it.
Hey, Billy, you see all these nut jobs going to USAID, the Democrats, now they're singing some goofy song. Do you think they're doing that because they care? Or do you think they're doing that because, oh man, our money source is going to dry up? Our little buddies, our little family members that we're taking care of, they know they're getting exposed. They're desperate. Billy, these people are nut
Brian,
jobs.
You don't think, like, there was a woman that was talking with Jeff down at the Trump protest down at the Capitol. I didn't think that she sounded like a nut job, nor did she sit there and bemoan the fact that all of her friends and family and everything aren't getting the paycheck. She talked about the work that is done internationally. And it is about greasing the skids at times, that when you go into countries like Uganda and other places in Africa and you help them fight off diseases and you help their kids grow up to be healthy adults, when they have access to resources and they start selling them on the open market, who are they most likely to do business with? The people that came to their aid when they were in need. That's psychological. That's why USAID is out there as a source. in part. I don't agree. I agree with you that they spent money in silly ways, but some of that is priority based, not necessarily fraud based. We haven't seen Elon demonstrate almost any fraud inside of USAID, just as one example. And that's an issue for me, because if we're going to fight fraud, we need, I said,
Billy,
almost no fraud.
Billy, think about it. Think about this. Why do not you want to be audited? Why don't they want to be audited? Think about it. There's a reason. There's always a reason, Billy.
Yes,
they don't want to get
what
audited.
Elon is doing, but what Elon's doing is not an audit, and that's a problem, man. I appreciate it, though.
Oh, he's going way further. He's pushing all of this through AI, and he's getting insight in ways we've never seen. I love it.
AI never makes mistakes,
You listen to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is News Talk 710 KNUS.